Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I just want to make sure we got good audio check with you guys over there. Greg, can you hear me? Hey, Greg, can you hear me? Are you talking in the mic there? Can you hear me, Greg?
Yeah, I can hear you get close to the mic like that, but you sitting back like that talking, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. Well, let me table to my left, and it does not have a microphone, and it does not have a monitor, and it does not have a camera. So when it gets to be our turn, we'll either move over to here so you can see and hear us. There's a podium up here that we may use, but I don't think there's a camera. I'm going to go up there and talk into the microphone and make sure you can at least hear us if we're at the podium, okay? Did you hear all that?
I heard part of it.
Maybe it's this mask. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, some, but it's yeah. I mean, it's not the best setup at all.
All right, well, I want to work on it because you need to hear this, okay? So let me get the technician guys here and see what we can figure out.
I'm having a hard time. I'm hard of hearing anyway.
Let me ask Travis, you hearing it okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's people in the background talking, I think, it's messing it up.
Yeah, you got younger ears.
I think it'll be all right.
Test, 1, 2, test, 1, 2, 3, test.
Okay, Greg, you can't see me. Can you hear me?
I hear you fine, but I can't see.
Can't see me, but can hear me, okay?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. It's on top of that.
Okay.
So the short answer is no. Well, so let me ask you this. I'm Frank. If we're over here, we're well morning, and it's not our turn. We're fine. When it's our turn, if we want to be seen and heard, are you saying you gotta just move over? Hey, Greg. Greg McMichael. Muted?
No. Well, I am with my cellular service. What's the network?
Is it on now? Greg McMichael, can you hear me? Can you see me? Look at should be a big view of the courtroom. I'm waving my hand.
Oh, yes, yes.
You see me?
There's indeed. Yes.
You can
You're-
hear
you're-
You can hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good deal.
Tell them that their microphone is on. Now, from this point forward, you should. All right. We got the state of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William Roddy Bryant. Let's go ahead and address a couple preliminary things. I don't have anybody within 6 feet of me. I'm going to drop this unless somebody, the witness, may put it back on for the witness. If the witnesses come up, I'll be addressing this and asked that way. I would like, since everybody is in much closer quarters in the courtroom itself, to keep the mask on. If we're having an issue with that being here, folks, I'll let y'all know.
Your Honor, may I ask for an exception? My co-counsel is my wife.
How about this? I will leave it to the discretion of those sitting at council table together.
Thank you.
And we'll just handle it that way. Thank you. All right, I have a notice of hearing that the court set out. There are really 6 separate things on my notice of hearing this morning. Just as a reminder to everybody, back on October 8th of this year, the notice of hearing went out. Court indicated it would hear today at 10 o'clock the petitions for bond on Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael. The court would also hear the special demurs. There's a joint motion for the deposition of Larry English. There is a motion filed by the state for an ex parte hearing, and also a motion to enjoin the state. Just for the record, the motion to enjoin the state has already been addressed by order of this court, so that is not going to be addressed here today. That order was entered October 15th. Those are the matters that are before the court. That being the case, I'd like to hear from all the parties just on whether we are ready on those matters, and then we'll address any preliminary matters. So, for the statement.
Subject to those preliminary matters, we're ready. Your Honor, on behalf of Travis McMichael, we're ready to proceed.
And on behalf of Greg McMichael, we're ready to proceed.
On behalf of Mr. Bryant, subject to preliminary matters, including motion filed this morning, we're ready to proceed. One of those preliminary matters, Your Honor, is, of course, my client's waiver of presence. His fiancee, his sister, his daughter, along with my investigator, are sitting in the other room. They would like to be present in the courtroom so that they can move their proceedings. They were allowed in the courtroom in the previous proceedings.
I don't know what the status of any of that is. The courtroom and the seating is up to the sheriff. There are other people that are here in the courtroom, and there's limited access. So what is the issue?
I believe the sheriff deputies on the outside are planning to bring them in. They don't necessarily know that we've started. The sheriff is aware of it. I thought it was being taken care of. But my client's immediate family, we contend that they should be present in the court, as they have been for the preliminary hearing and the bond hearing. In this case, this is the first time the family has been excluded from court. And I don't think the sheriff is intending to do that. I just want to clarify that before we got into something, and I didn't want to disrupt the train of thought in today's proceedings.
So I'm not sure what I'm being asked to do.
I've asked that my client's immediate family be allowed to sit in the back of the courtroom as they have for the previous proceedings. I think the deputy may be bringing them in right now, and so that's fine.
So what would you like the court just wait to see what happens? Again, Mr. Cobb, these are things I would hope would be addressed before I took the bench, because now I'm just waiting to see what happens. Had you discussed this with the sheriff?
Yes, yes I have.
And the resolution was?
My understanding is that they're going to bring them in, but we have started the hearing and they're not here.
So as I understand, it's not an issue they should be in the court. Fair to
They
say?
should be entering court.
All right, I guess while we're addressing Mr. Bryan, I've got a waiver of appearance that is signed by you, Mr. Goff, indicating that Mr. Bryan does not wish to participate at all in the proceedings today.
He wishes to waive his appearance. That's correct, Your Honor, for the reasons that are stated there.
Well, what I'm wondering, the reasons that are stated in here, there's a medical issue, of course, not going to get into that, and then Another matter that I think can be very simply addressed. The court has the ability to not put him on camera and have him listen to everything that occurs here today. Are you saying he doesn't even want to hear what's happening in the courtroom here today?
If that's his choice, Your Honor, we'll take that choice. We just don't want him on camera under the circumstances today. If he has a medical problem during the hearing, nobody will be able to see it. The sheriff will be able to handle that discreetly with that instruction.
Okay. Well, I'm going to instruct the sheriff then, and just so that we're clear on the record, all of the defendants are available by video, and the court is going to certify that we're in compliance with the Uniform Superior Court rules on the video. The instruction then to the sheriff would be that Mr. Bryan should not be on camera, but he should be able to hear and see all of the proceedings.
Being set up, Judge.
Thank you, Your Honor.
See, there's some additional folks in the courtroom. These the individuals.
Yes, Your Honor. They are present, and they are socially distanced and masked. You're ready to proceed.
All right. That being the case then, preliminary matters. I'm going to start on my left and work to the right. From the state.
Judge, we filed 2 motions in limine. One involving the character of the deceased victim, Ahmaud Arbery. The other motion in limine that was filed in response to the defense exhibits that were turned over to us involved some irrelevant press releases from the Department of Justice. So those are the 2 matters that I have on my list that are pending from the state that have been filed in response to defense filings.
Preliminary matters then. On behalf of Travis McMichael.
Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. McMichael, Travis McMichael, we filed several motions in limine to keep out some state exhibits. One is objection to exhibits in motion in limine. It's labeled or it's titled motion in limine regarding proposed state bond hearing exhibits. It's 1.10. We, of course, join in the motions filed by on behalf of Greg.
And from Greg McMichael.
Thank you, Your Honor. We filed motion 1.12, defendant's objection to admissibility of social media evidence.
Your Honor, we also filed defendant's motion 1.9, defendant's objection to Exhibit 4 of the state's evidence exhibits list for the bond hearing.
That's the preliminary hearing transcript, as I recall, correct?
That's right.
By Mr. Goff, without Mr. Bryan.
Your Honor, we've joined in the deposition motion and the demur filed by McMichael. The only thing that we have specifically here today is our special demur. I've laid out our issues with the indictment. The state has filed your usual thorough responsive pleading. We don't feel the need to orally argue those. We submit those on the motion and response that are filed.
When we get to the demurs, just on the record, we'll address how we'll argue those. But I was just saying, understand that there's no preliminary matters.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. Well, let's work through that. Those preliminary matters then. We'll start with the state. We'll address the motion eliminate on the character issues as well as the press releases, just so the parties are aware. I have received the filings as they've come in. I've done my best to review everything that's come in as well as the exhibits. I've got a couple of flash drives that I brought down with me that have been sent by, I believe, Travis McMichael's counsel and also the state. I've taken a look as best I can at what's on the flash drives. So I'm familiar with what is before the court, just so that everybody is aware as we get into this. What I'd like to do is address the true issues before the court as opposed to spending a lot of time informing the court or instructing the court what is actually out there. Okay. All right.
With that, Judge, in response to some items that were turned over to us, particularly from Travis McMichael regarding exhibits, that was actually sent to us. We received it November the 12th of 2020. There was an email list of what those exhibits were. Then it was actually received by the state by, I think it was FedEx on the 12th. So just within that 3-day period as instructed by the court in its notice, there are a number of things on that list that are not pertinent, irrelevant to the issue at hand today, which is whether or not Travis McMichael is a good candidate for bond. I know the court is keenly aware of the 4 factors that you must consider in determining whether Mr. McMichael, that being Travis McMichael, should be granted bond. It's a discretionary act at this point, as we'll get into during that bond argument. Essentially, what's been provided to the state, and I know the court has a copy of that too, are a number of things that are irrelevant, such as unrelated things involving the deceased victim, Ahmaud Arbery, that have nothing to do with the alleged crime in this particular case, and in particular, the narrow issues that this court must pass upon for bond. Essentially, I would suggest to the court, as we did in our filing that was filed November the 9th, it's character evidence, and it's impermissible. It would be impermissible at trial. It certainly is not permissible to go into those items that are irrelevant for issues of bond. So we would urge the court to grant our motion in limine based on the objection that we have put in writing and filed, because it's just not pertinent to the 4 factors that you must consider.
I guess we'll address these one at a time. On behalf of Travis McMichael, I believe what was submitted was a joint filing.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's do one at a time. On behalf of Travis McMichael.
Jason Sheffield, Your Honor. It's nice to see you. Your Honor, this only becomes relevant if the state is permitted to go into what they have proposed to go into on their case in chief of this morning bond hearing. We do not intend to offer this evidence that we believe falls under 404B, that also falls under admissible evidence of mental illness, unless the state attempts to use the facts of the case and to try to characterize those facts of the case in a way that speaks to the bond factors. So we have preemptively informed the state as well as the court of the evidence that we would intend to go into should the court allow the state to use the preliminary hearing transcript to establish certain facts. For example, previously the court allowed the state to offer evidence of the facts of the case to deal with the issue of seriousness of the offense and the possible consequences of conviction as a way to look at the possibility of flight. And so the state was able to then characterize evidence and facts and argue that they fit under flight and that this offense was so serious that there was a risk of flight. And the court adopted that argument into its order ultimately, and seriousness of offense is something that the court can consider. However, we would intend, if the court allows the state to get into that, to show why we believe this case is not only defensible, but winnable on the issues that would be allowed to come in at trial that rebuts the facts that the state seeks to enter. I'm trying to be respectful and follow the court's order already, or at least what you've instructed us this morning, that you've looked at all of these things that you sent to me without naming them specifically. And so 404B evidence, which a lot of that is 404B evidence, and speaks to 2 very important factors that deal with the self-defense component of the case, as well as explains Yes, sir.
Let's say self-defense does come up. How do you go from what would be, I think, arguable reputation to specific acts?
How do you go from reputation to
Right.
specific acts?
We're talking about, because we're talking about here's the victim.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, I'm moving well past where we are with bond, because you're
Right.
suggesting it somehow comes up in bond.
Yes, I'm suggesting it comes up in bond should the state open the door to it, Your Honor.
But you follow my question?
Well, reputation, opinion and reputation evidence is admissible at the time to determine, if those issues about reputation are important to the case. But specific act evidence of the alleged victim can also come in under 404B if it speaks directly to an important element in the case, or if it speaks to the defense in the case. So it's not something, Your Honor, we have a case in chief, and our case in chief falls squarely within the four factors of a outline.
So I'm going to make this very clear for everyone, because I made it very clear when you asked bond with Mr. Osborne. We're not trying to case the
We don't want to.
We're going to be dealing with bond. I don't know what the defenses are, and I don't know what the state's theory of the case ultimately will be for trial. So we're going to keep it as narrow as we can here. And again, let's get back to the preliminary hearing transcript. I stayed on the record last time we were here. I read it. I'm familiar with it. I'm not sure how you unring that bell as far as it being evidence in bonding. Of course, for me, the facts of the case. Sure, it would be silly to think that I wasn't. So I'm just wondering how to walk through this, because I understand what you're saying. I'm just not sure that we reach into it.
I think that's great, Your Honor. We don't want to reach into it, and we intend to call witnesses to deal with ties to the community, the history of the family, and why Travis McMichael is a good candidate for bond. But we have been provided with exhibits by the state, and those exhibits, we feel, do not begin to address the four factors of Ayala and really go into the facts of the case, including the state's declaration that this is about racism, racist whites running after and murdering an innocent black child. And so that is what we believe the state is going to be presenting to the court this morning. And we would ask that the court not allow the state to present that. However, based on the court's prior order with Mr. Bryan, the court did use specific facts from the preliminary hearing transcript, which we have filed a motion to remedy an objection before doing again. And I respect what the court is saying. The bell's been rung in terms of you read it. However, if you intend to go into that transcript and pick out facts and then use those facts to substantiate a denial or not of bond, then we feel that we have the right to rebut the facts that came out during the preliminary hearing. And we would ask the court to allow us to do that. Of course, we don't want to have to go down that road. We would rather not be dealing with 404B evidence today. We would rather not be dealing with future expert testimony in response to the state's position. So we're really just here waiting to see what the state attempts to do. And we filed this out of an abundance of caution to make the court aware of what we think could happen if the court opens the door to these things.
On behalf of Greg
Franklin Hogue on behalf of Greg McMichael, and let me just say as a matter of procedure, there's no microphone or camera at Greg McMichael's counsel table. So we do have a camera that depicts the podium here, and this microphone works, and we tested it before you came on the bench. So whenever we speak, we'll need to move up here. For purposes of this issue, we've joined in that motion and add nothing further to the argument you just heard. We stand on the argument Travis McMichael's counsel has just made.
All right, let's stay on the press releases.
Yes, Judge. Before I do that, I want to confirm for the court and our record that the Sheriff Jump has confirmed that Mr. Bryan is able to hear and has been listening to the proceedings. So I want to make sure that the record is clear that that has been accomplished, and we remain appreciative to the Sheriff's Office for all your hard work on this case. It's difficult doing this remotely as it is, but thank you for doing that in a timely fashion. With that, Judge, I filed a motion as well regarding the press releases in this particular case. So I know this court is keenly aware from Mr. Bryan's prior bond hearing, one of the exhibits that we introduced and have will be offering today is the public press release from the Department of Justice about their concurrent investigation into certain hate crimes, civil rights violations that arguably have occurred. And that was a factor that the court noted during that prior bond hearing. So not surprisingly, I don't think that anyone, the state similarly put the defense on notice, the McMichaels, that we were going to delve into that issue as well, and we labeled that exhibit as well. In response to that, I received from the defense, I believe it was Greg McMichael, a filing that indicated that they wanted to offer into evidence a number of apparently press releases involving hate crimes in other states and other jurisdictions that have absolutely nothing to do with this particular case. So our objection, obviously, is that they're not relevant. They were out of the states of Indiana, Michigan, Mississippi, California. Of note, none of those press releases appear to deal with a violent death as we have in this particular case. I'm not particularly sure what the purpose of offering those would be, but ours is essentially a relevance objection. How could those possibly be relevant to what we're dealing with in this particular case, Your Honor, and the four factors that I remind the court you must pass upon in determining whether either Greg or Travis or both are good defendants, good candidates for bond.
Yeah, when we received notice from the state of their exhibit list and saw Exhibit 6 is the DOJ public press release that was used in Mr. Bryan's bond hearing. And of course, we read the transcript and saw how the court considered it. It appeared to the court in that hearing to be consideration on the issue of flight. That is, that Mr. Bryan posed a significant risk of flight because of concerns, we presume, that the Department of Justice was also investigating him and now also Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael for possible prosecution under the federal hate crimes statutes. So I went on to the DOJ website to look for the press release that we'd gotten. It looked unusual, the paper copy or the digital copy that we printed. I couldn't find it on their website, but I did find that they have page after page of press releases, just like this one purports to be. And those press releases I read through, and it looked like this was the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division telling the public, these are the kinds of hate crimes cases your Department of Justice prosecutes. Well, I read a couple of dozen of them, and I thought, well, they're nothing much like our case. There's a huge difference. I also looked up the statute, one of the statutes that, and I practice in federal court as well, so I was familiar with those statutes and read those and parsed the elements of those crimes and concluded that, as Mr. Sheffield just said, we believe this murder case here in Glenn County is defensible and winnable. I look at that hate crimes case, if the feds ever do bring one, as eminently defensible and winnable. So I picked out pretty much at random, really, 4 out of dozens or really scores of press releases that the DOJ put on their website as illustrative to the court of the types of cases they actually do prosecute. In order to address the court's concern that we might pose a significant risk of flight if released on bond in this murder case, because we have some fear that the feds are going to come arrest us and charge us in federal court with a federal hate crime, where I am even more confident that that case could be beaten. Based on the statutes that I'm familiar with, based on the types of cases in these press releases that they do prosecute, and they are illustrative of what the Department of Justice considers to be a real hate crimes case for which they will get an indictment, prosecution, a conviction, and a prison sentence. So that's the purpose. They're illustrative only. They're not meant to mirror the facts of our case, to show different treatment for the same sorts of things. They're really meant to illustrate this is what federal hate crimes cases are really about, and this case is not one of those.
All right, there's two matters on behalf of the state. On behalf of Travis and Michael, there's a motion to keep certain of the state exhibits out.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. The state's exhibit list has on it as State's Exhibit 8 and State's Exhibit 10. They are seeking to admit today for the court's consideration of bond a text message, about 5 or 6 Facebook posts, and 2 videos that were shared through social media. And we have moved in limine to exclude those for relevance purposes. And the court has 1.10, which is our motion that states that very clearly. I have to repeat it because the court has already instructed that we do that and consider these things. We do not think it is admissible evidence because we don't think it's relevant. If the court wants to go into and have further argument on the issue, we just simply asked as a matter of procedure that we identify the exhibits by number, not talking about what's in those exhibits as I have tried to restrain from doing, talking about 404B, and that the court issue a ruling on the admissibility of those things. The reason being, Your Honor, we think that the court should exclude them because they don't deal with the IL factors, and we stated the reasons why. However, if the court decides to have them presented, then we need to address those issues through our witnesses that we call on our case in chief. And we don't want to do that and open the door without instruction from the court.
I guess that's really weird. In your submission, it doesn't matter for procedure, we're also looking at the figure portion for procedure too.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Judge, State 8 and State 10 involve evidence that we think is pertaining to the issue that we just addressed. There's been a narrative here, very publicly, in fact, even on Breakdown, a public AJC podcast, that this is not about race, that these defendants are not racist, that this is not a, there's no racial component to this. You've also just heard from Greg McMichael's attorneys that they are suggesting that there isn't a likelihood that there will be a successful either prosecution or maybe even going a step before that, indictment of these defendants on federal hate crimes charges. Obviously, what that is impactful for our hearing today is risk of flight, risk of committing new crimes, dangerousness, those types of things. So State's Exhibits number 8 and State's Exhibits 10, there's numerous exhibits within there, go directly to those 2 issues to show that, hey, this is not pie in the sky, that there might be some action that's occurring here, but actually contrary to the narrative that has been asserted by the defense regarding what their views are on race. We've actually uncovered evidence to support what the Department of Justice is looking into, which will be State's Exhibit number 6. And certainly that would have bearing on this court's decision about whether there is an issue regarding risk of flight, risk of committing new crimes, and dangerousness.
On behalf of Greg McMichael, there's the social media evidence and which we may have already addressed, really, but that's preliminary here.
Oh, you're talking about 1.9?
I'm sorry, 1.
Okay, I guess.
I mentioned Exhibit 4.
You know, this is our objection to the state's use of the preliminary hearing transcript. And let me just start at the end with the relief sought by this motion. It's a ruling from the court that the preliminary hearing transcript itself is not admissible. And I'll fill in the reasons in a moment. and that if the state is allowed and chooses to introduce into evidence in their case in chief at a bond hearing underlying facts alleged in the case at hand, then they should do so through a witness or any number of witnesses they choose. They did give notice that GBI agent Richard Dial is on their witness list, and he was their witness at the preliminary hearing. That instead of using a bare transcript, they just call him for whichever facts out of that hearing they now contend they can prove by a preponderance of the evidence as opposed to probable cause, and that are relevant to one or more of the 4 bond factors. Then in their argument, I suppose if it gets in, they can argue to the court how that fact is relevant, namely how it predicts future bond violation behavior by the defendant who the court may find by a preponderance committed that underlying act. So the motion is asking the court to rule the preliminary hearing transcript itself to be inadmissible because it was conducted at a time where the standard of proof was lower and the goals of the hearing by defense counsel were different, and therefore we were not using that hearing to establish a record that would be useful to the court at a bond hearing. And now we're at a bond hearing where the standard of proof is a step higher. The cross-examination goals would be different. The response with witnesses in rebuttal would be different than we would have done and did do at a preliminary hearing. So that's the relief sought. The alternative to it, we asked, and this is in the alternative, is that the state be required to say which of the facts out of the scores and scores of factual things discussed at the preliminary hearing are, or from the preliminary hearing, are proven by a preponderance of the evidence, and then they can argue their relevance to show that they predict future bond violation behavior by the defendants. So in responding to us, they did bullet point 19 discrete facts that they say are not exhaustive. They said not limited to these things, and then if the court saw that list, as the court's indicated you have done in reading over the filings, there were bullet pointed 19 discrete facts. And yet they say, but we could use more. And we wanted to be prepared to know, well, what are we rebutting from a preliminary hearing at a bond hearing? So the relief sought is a ruling that says no preliminary hearing transcript is admissible at this bond hearing. In the alternative, if it is admissible, that the state either select those facts, or if they stick to the 19 they've given us notice about in the response filing, then those are the only 19 facts they use, because we can address those. And if other new ones come up, we may need to regroup and decide how we will rebut the new fact that we didn't get notice about.
Your Honor, may I add to what Mr. Hogue said? And I agree with everything Mr. Hogue said. I would also add, this goes directly to the heart of the issue of whether the court wants to try this case at a bond hearing. The facts alleged, the facts laid out by the state in its response to Mr. Hogue's pleading, set forth conclusions based on facts it suggests are contained within the preliminary hearing transcript. Most of those facts, and we've gone through all 19, are disputed by the defense. And if the state intends to introduce the preliminary hearing transcript for the 19 facts or conclusions it draws from that transcript, then we would ask the court respectfully to be able to rebut those facts in our rebuttal. And that, again, opens the door, as Mr. Sheffield previously explained to the court. We would have to get into some of the facts of the case that we've set forth in our exhibit list that the court now has reviewed. So I just wanted to, it's very frustrating to understand and abide by the court's ruling. We're not trying this case, and yet the state continues to try the case and allege facts that we dispute. For instance, even in one of the first lines of its responsive pleading, it calls Mr. Arbery a jogger. We have substantial evidence that on the day in question, Mr. Arbery was not a jogger. He was there for nefarious purposes. We would have to respond to that allegation of fact with facts of our own in order to rebut the state's evidence. So I'm just saying everything Mr. Hogue says about the burden of proof being different and the goals of cross-examination being different is true, but it also opens this bond hearing up to a mini trial on the facts the state contends support its position.
I want to first point out to the court some law, which I think is always important when we come to a courtroom, and that law is that the burden of proof for bond falls on the defense in this particular case. It doesn't fall on the state. We're not required to call any witnesses in this particular case. We may choose to do so. We may choose not to do so, and the law doesn't require that we call live witnesses. In fact, if we look at OCGA 24-1-2C, Part 6, you'll see that the rules of evidence shall not apply in proceedings with respect to release on bond. This is not going to be a trial. The state does not want to try this case. We have no intention to try the case, Your Honor. State's Exhibit Number 4, you're already familiar with what it is. I believe you actually watched the probable cause hearing, which is expansive, probably more expansive than I've seen in my career. I intend to talk about facts that are directly pertinent from State's Exhibit Number 4 to the 4 criteria that this court must pass upon and nothing else. I will also submit to the court that if there are facts that the defense believes are pertinent to those 4 criteria that weigh in their favor, we probably are not going to have any objection to them arguing to the court what those facts are that weigh in favor of them getting a bond. But we're not going to try the case today, and that's not the purpose of us being here and our purpose of the submission of State's Exhibit Number 4. As I articulated in our response to the court, we believe that there are pertinent facts included in that transcript that this court must and should consider in determining whether you believe any of these defendants are good candidates for bond. And we'll be touching upon those and those only. There is no requirement in law that the state articulate with specificity what its argument is regarding those particular facts. I think as seasoned prosecutors and defense attorneys and a seasoned judge, that we can all surmise which of those facts probably bear in favor of or against bond. But I'm not required, unless the court tells me otherwise, to articulate specifically why we think those facts have bearing on the 4 criteria that you must pass upon. Nonetheless, because the defense raised the issue, I did bullet point what some of those things are in response to them, and I will note that their objection is really an objection about a notice issue, and really what they're asking is for us to articulate or argue why we think some of those facts may be pertinent or may not be pertinent, and there's just no requirement that occur, Judge. So we ask that you deny this motion. There's simply no basis for it, no basis in law, based on the burden of proof, based on the statute that I cited for the court. I know the court's already familiar with State's Exhibit Number 4 anyway, so this motion should be denied, and we should be allowed to now address those 4 factors.
I believe those are all preliminary matters.
We have one more preliminary matter that is defendants.
Is it 1.12?
It is, Your Honor. Thank you. Defendants 1.12 relates specifically to a couple of pieces of evidence that the state indicated they would be intending to introduce that were found and connected to the social media account of Gregory McMichael, the State's Exhibit Number 9, and it corresponds as well with State's Exhibit Number 7, which is an article from the Southern Poverty Law Center concerning a certain hate crime group. I think possibly being tendered to try to explain why they think some of the language in the social media ought to be considered seriously. So here's the issue, Your Honor. Facebook is an unusual animal. Facebook posts don't necessarily mean that the owner of a Facebook account has adopted those views, that those views are representative of attitudes and opinions about anything that appear on a Facebook page. I'm a very rare Facebook user, and I'm often shocked to see the things that appear on my wall that other people, that express other people's opinions and attitudes. But in this instance, we have a couple of categories of posts. I think we can agree, I've spoken with the state before the hearing today, once I filed that motion, that there is a very short video that the state agrees there is no evidence that they have that that video expresses or reflects that Greg McMichael viewed it, commented it, posted it, adopted the views in it in any way. All that they have is evidence that it appeared in his account. It was on his Facebook page. And that's the video. There is as well there is a post, and I don't think there's any other way to argue it, but generally the posts have two objections. There's a April 17th, 2019 picture with two children on it. Do you have those in front of you, Your Honor?
I don't have them in front of me now.
All right. Well, perhaps I'll hand them to you.
I've got the written submissions. I've got the flash drives up here with me. There was a number of printed submissions also since the court. I haven't put those on them.
Yes, and the state wisely printed everything out, so I can hand them to you, but I'll just give you these arguments generally, and what you may decide to do is we would hold off on this to see if the state does still intend to introduce this after the presentation of our case in chief and our burden of production. But they are, in fact, irrelevant if they cannot be linked and shown to have been viewed, posted, adopted by, commented on, forwarded, approved in any way by an individual who owns the Facebook account. That's number one. Number two, I don't see any relevance to the posts that were listed on State's Exhibit number 9 and any issue in this case. They don't reflect the racist attitudes that the state is seeking to attribute to Mr. McMichael. They may represent attitudes that the state doesn't agree with, but in fact there's no correlation between those posts and the kinds of ways that the state, with all due respect, is trying to shoehorn the narrative of this case into. So for those reasons, Your Honor, there isn't any real way to argue the specifics of them without us talking about the posts and bringing them to your attention. We may want to, since it will be later on in the day, we may want to readdress this if they end up deciding to introduce any of these.
I've got different ways I'm thinking about addressing this different state.
Judge, what they're referring to is an objection to State's Exhibit number 9, which I'll just refer to as Defendant Greg McMichael's social media, and there's some subparts that are in there as well. First and foremost, I appreciate that this is an expansive file that we have to go through, and we're dealing with things sort of on the fly, but you did impose some notice requirements regarding how we're conducting hearings today, and I just want to note for the record that yesterday was a travel day from the state, in that we were traveling on a holiday from Cobb County down here, and it was while traveling that I first received this new filing that said that they want to keep that out. So I do raise that. I'm happy to address it as needed here, but I think notice requirements are there for a reason. I believe the court has said that any filings or objections needed to be handled within 3 days prior to the hearing per your notice. Nonetheless, now that I've addressed that, Judge, I will point out a case that is adverse to the defense position. It's Johnson, and it's 348 Georgia Appeals 667. It's a 2019 case that addresses social media and essentially authentication and issues regarding it. While I agree that the evidence supports that a particular video was received by defendant Greg McMichael, it's nonetheless there on his social media. Somebody thought that it was important enough that they wanted to share that with him. And it is consistent with other evidence that we've found that involves action by that part of that defendant, as I can articulate when we get to that point. This Johnson case stands for the proposition that a court must look at the circumstantial evidence to determine whether or not it supports that this is somehow associated. And clearly this is a video that is associated with defendant's page, and it's consistent with other things included in this exhibit that I'm articulating for the court that the defendant actually affirmatively took action with. So it's not just received, it's actually a song that not only he received, but also his co-defendant and housemate, Travis McMichael, also received from a different party, and then laughed at it on social media, and then turned around and transmitted it. So it's the same song with different video for two housemates and co-defendants, with father and son. We don't need to get into really the nuts and bolts of authentication because it's not required at this point, Your Honor, because of the prior rules that I've cited for the court. But it goes to the 4 factors that we must consider and that we must pass upon and the court must pass upon in terms of risk of flight, dangerousness. Certainly all of those things are pertinent for this court. It goes hand in hand with what we've articulated for the court involving the Department of Justice release, which we've listed in our exhibits. And not just the possibility, but I articulate to the court the probability that there's future charges and other crimes that have been committed by these defendants, which go directly to 2 of the factors, the 4 factors that this court must pass upon.
Your Honor, if I may respond. The notion that someone has put a piece of mail in your mailbox doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean that people who want you to feel the way they feel, and so they give you materials like that, mean that you somehow should presume that the individual cares for those same ideals. Without circumstantial or actual evidence that the person looked at it and adopted those views, that it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't ring true to any of the factors, Your Honor. I will say to this court, especially during this political season, I am a diehard Democrat, and if you were to go to my mailbox the last couple of weeks, you would think I was not, because every political ad from everyone is in my mailbox. Unless there's circumstantial evidence that my neighbor saw me pick up a Republican ad and rip it into shreds, then the existence of that ad in my mailbox, without more, doesn't say anything about me. This isn't a question of authentication at all, Your Honor. This is a question of relevance.
All right, on the preliminary matters, maybe some of the more simple ones, at least in court first. On the motion to eliminate on the character evidence of the victim, the court's granting that at this time. I'll listen to whatever the evidence is that gets presented. But at this point, character of victim is not a step the court is willing to take on here. If for some reason something comes up during the presentation of evidence today and the court needs to reconsider that, I'll make sure the parties are keenly aware of the fact that the court is reconsidering it, and we'll go ahead and address it at the time. But let's assume that we are not getting into that today. As far as the press releases from the Department of Justice, the way that evidence has been described tells the court that there's very little relevance. I'm sure it's a random selection of press releases, which would be third party. However they were generated, there's just not a lot of weight there. And I say that in the context of this case. In this case, I think everybody that is participating here and inside the bar, is aware of the fact that the Southern District of Georgia is investigating a hate crimes case. It's been published all over the place. That is what it now, the strength of that case, whether or not it will in fact be brought before the court, I don't know. But as I understand it, that's still ongoing. If anybody has any evidence to indicate otherwise, I'd be open to hear that. We don't need to get into other Department of Justice decisions made out of other districts, particularly through press releases. So we don't need to get into that. As to the social media, and I realize there are a number of different items out there. I guess I have two thoughts on it. The first is, it strikes me that most of the arguments go to that. And I say that, unfortunately, because we have what would normally be a narrow sliver of this case that all of a sudden opens the door to a great deal of evidence that everybody seems to have a great deal of consternation about. And that is the potential of the state bringing out motive and statement. That's really what we're talking about. Unfortunately, it seems that is going to dominate this case as other people's. Because of that, this social media evidence that the state has at least some element of relevance to it. Now, the weight of what is being presented, and I take this from Ms. Hogue, I don't necessarily disagree with the position that just because something sits out there in social media means that an individual has adopted it as their own position. So I'm letting it in, but it's a weight issue. The bond is a matter that's before the court. We stand before the evidence, and I'm going to consider it as the court should. As we move further along in this case, let's not forget that we have not made any decisions with regard to what is and is not going to be the evidence at trial. And there would have to be a little bit more of an explanation as to what that Facebook evidence and other social media evidence is for that matter. And what reliability there is that exists that will allow the court to have the parties present that to the jury. So, for the purposes of the bond hearing, I'm going to allow him to wait. The court hasn't determined what weight I'm going to give it at this point. The preliminary hearing transcript. And I read through the state's submission. Was mentioning the state's conclusions that were reached. I went through it. I mean, what has been submitted to the court.
Your Honor, while you're looking for that, may I ask one thing? Could we check in just to make sure you sound soft to me here, and I want to make sure my client is hearing the court. Mr. McMichael, are you hearing the judge?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Well, and I'm not sure how this microphone works for speakers. Yeah, if at any point during the proceedings anybody has any problem hearing it, and particularly the jail seeing it, please let me know and we'll get that addressed as quickly as we can. What I was looking for was the state's response to the defendant's objection to Exhibit 4 filed on November 10th. In that, on page 6, beginning on page 6, and going on is a number of bullet points. I think those are the bullet points that were being addressed by the defense. They are conclusory. We all know the difference between facts and conclusions. And so, the court's familiar with the preliminary hearing transcript. As far as what's in there, it's in there. Mr. Dial was put on the stand. I said last time we were together, I didn't say it in these terms, but I was, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this so that nobody's offended. I was struck by the length and depth of that preliminary hearing. It has produced an extremely long transcript, with the parties having the ability to go well beyond preliminary hearing and really almost into discovery in this case. So I understand the defense's position, but I'm not going to exclude Exhibit 4 as part of being an exhibit. There are facts in the case that this court is familiar with. I'm not going to grant the defendant's motion on Exhibit 4. I think that is all of the preliminary matters. Let me say something else about this case. You know, there are certain, and it came to when Mr. Hugg was talking, there are certain differences about what the court can and can't do with regard to the actions of counsel outside the courtroom, different federal court from state court, superior court. And I want to bring this up because there's also reference today to podcasts and various other things. And what I've noticed in this case is there's a lot of back and forth about, again, what I'll call a very narrow but extremely important issue that is going on in this case. I, being the superior court, and you as the parties to this case, eventually will need to select a jury. And whether that's here in Boone County or any place else in the state of Georgia, I will tell you right now that it is a concern to the court that we're running around and jumping on podcasts trying a portion of this case out in the media. And I'm not telling anyone that they have to stop. I'm just making sure everybody's aware of their professional responsibility and what needs to happen in this case, which is ultimately getting a fair trial in the state of Georgia. And I bring it up now because I've got a feeling as we get into the evidence here today, there's going to be a bunch of artillery being thrown back and forth on some very touchy subjects, things that can inflame individuals. And I see it as my role in this case to keep a level head and make sure everybody around me keeps a level head. So I just throw that out there because the other struggle in this case is given COVID and public health emergencies and judicial orders, we're kind of limping along a little bit. And I find in cases like this, the longer we have to sit there, as a partner of mine, private practice used to call it, we can navel gaze forever. The longer we do that, the greater issues become. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware that I'm, like I said this last time, I'm familiar with the case. I've looked at what's been filed. I have some concerns about how we're going to get to a trial in this case and how quickly. And I want to make sure that we get there with this pre-direct into my hospital.
May I respond briefly to that, Your Honor? This is something the court would not be aware of, and as much for the record and the benefit of the parties, I do want to raise this possibility. Very early on, I believe it was the very first conversation that DA Joyette Holmes and I had with the Travis McMichael's defense team. We had offered the idea of a consent gag order for all sides. And I believe I had that discussion with the Hogues as well regarding Greg McMichael. I'm not positive on that, but I know that we had the discussion in our first phone conversation with Travis McMichael's counsel. So I just throw it out there, Judge, that we are open to that discussion. Obviously, I'm not asking for the court to make any ruling at this point, and we are always concerned about access to the courts and things like that, but I will throw that olive branch out there that we are happy to continue those discussions if we think that it would be fruitful to be able to get to a point where we can actually try the case in the courtroom and not the court of public opinion. And I wanted the court to be aware that that offer has been made and stands.
Again, the court's not going to take any position on it. One nice thing about this case is we've got a group of very professional lawyers who have a lot of experience and are familiar with the difficulty in getting a case to trial to begin with, particularly high-profile cases. So those discussions have happened. Great. I'm just letting you all know that I'm trying to keep track of what's going on out there, and I would like to be able to get this case tried without a great deal of background noise. All right. So the court has ruled on the preliminary matters. I have the bonds then for Greg McMichael and Travis McMichael burden of proof is on the defendants, so who is going first?
Actually, Your Honor, the state misstated that. The burden of proof is on the state. The burden of production is on the defense.
I'm going to use different, burden of proof, burden of persuasion, however we do it. It's the defendant's motion.
Yeah, it's our motion. We're prepared to go forward with our case in chief. That's what we call leading it.
And let me do this before we get started, and I'm not sure that there was discussion about this with parties. Since we have live witnesses, we didn't have, well, I guess we did the last time, but we didn't handle it this way. What I understand the protocol is here in Glenn County. So we have a live witness. When that live witness steps down, the witness box, microphone, chair, everything will be wiped down for public health reasons. So just so that everybody's aware, we're going to try to facilitate that as best we can. But we're going to be doing that.
Thank you.
Sure, I'm guessing that if you're going to be more than one witness, now would be a good time to take a break. I don't want to interrupt the witness's testimony, go to that.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes.
That's all. Because I'm sure when they call it, they're probably expecting a magically. I'll ask him, I would ask. We'll just find out where she's at, so she can be brought in. And if need to, we can move it somewhere.
Oh, where are the rest of them? Oh.
I got people for preliminary ruling. You made me in the courtroom.
Yeah, just stay right there.
Where are you at? Sure. Mark, grab Judge Scarlett's chair off the bench and bring it over here.
Okay. Well, you mean this on a regular big chair
Yeah,
and put it on the bench up here?
yes.
Only here, don't touch anything here. Don't worry about it. Here. He needs to.
I want to be separate to the jury assembly.
He's our IT guy.
If y'all go in and out of here, please don't swing this gate. Thank you. That's all right.
Can you ask everybody to speak into the microphones, because if there's two persons on that side, the microphone
We're not going
Oh, you presented the
Yeah. It's a little more closer, improve the audio a bit. Just keeping the microphone that way.
So if I were to put it on those keys, isolate what would do and the keyboard and the mouse is right here on the podium. Okay. And I'm remote, let me know. Is it PowerPoint? No, it's just PDFs. PDFs? Okay. So, do it for everybody else now? But if it was, if it's just PDF, I should just, what that just did, it just pop up. Can we keep that right there? Yep. We can. I don't know if that's what's the next round, y'all present it or so? Or the, I'm going next. Okay, okay. But I'm remotely looking at everything on your side, so I'll be watching you for a second. Yeah. So if you got to get in the gym, don't worry, I'll be set into this month. Yeah, just like, hey, can you pull up my presentation? Yeah. All right, you got you. So just so I know, so I don't need you, when I'm ready, go to that arrow, click on it, and then go to the very first screen. Got it. Because you want to share your desktop, because that's what you got plugged in right now. That's my desktop. Yep. And that's not sure. And just to be a witness, you look at it on the screen, still be seeing what you have up there.
We're going to call this up.
I got it right here.
Oh.
Yeah, we put, you don't need the mouse right
I don't think so. I'm in trouble, I'll let you know.
So y'all gotta be here about microphone, when you talking.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I just turned on the camera, I don't know if you saw it popped up. Yeah, I was just wondering, I heard you said something about audio. We're next to listening to it too. Yeah, so I was just kind of curious if you could feel over there too. Test, 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 test.
I don't know if there's another box. That's the only one I've seen. Usually, for
Maybe over there about the clerk's testing, maybe so.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I have some in my bag.
Are we ready? Defense, we ready?
We're ready to proceed, yes?
Yes, sir.
Order in court, remain seated.
Apparently, on the live feed, there are some issues hearing everybody. So, and I'm happy to hear from the council if anybody has any concern about handling it this way. What I'd like to do to make sure that we get audio is apparently the podium is picking up sound just fine. What we'll try to do is get everybody to speak from the podium. What I would do ask, if you could just avoid touching it or moving it or doing anything else with it. Does anybody have any issues handling audio in the audio?
Not from the stage.
Saying just use the podium all the time?
Just don't touch it.
Did you say don't touch the mic or the podium?
I would prefer both. I just don't want to have to deal with coming in after everybody speaks. That's probably being a little too lifty. Anyway, come across the way I need it to. There, obviously, we have the ability to clean the mic and clean the podium after everybody speaks. In order to move forward, we can try without touching the podium or the mic to just get everybody out there so the audio is good.
I'll try. I just always have the height differential problem.
I understand the realities and the theories sometimes doesn't match.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you. And Your Honor, may I, while I'm at the podium, take my mask off so we can Your Honor, we have 5 witnesses we intend to call as bond witnesses, and I believe 4 documents. So we'll begin with our first witness, Ms. Lee McMichael.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Would you state your name for the court reporter,
It's
please?
Allison Lee McMichael,
And how do you spell your last name, Ms. McMichael?
M-C-M-I-C-H-A-E-L.
Ms. McMichael, I'm going to ask you to come forward a little bit. There you go.
Is that it?
Yep, just speak into that microphone.
Okay.
Take a deep breath. Would you tell the court, Ms. McMichael, where you live?
In Brunswick,
And how long have you lived in Brunswick?
all my life.
You don't have to tell us exactly, but approximately how old are you?
I'm 61.
And you lived in Brunswick all of your life.
Yes, I have.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm an RN.
An RN?
Mhm.
Licensed by the state of Georgia?
Yes, I am.
What kind of work are you currently doing as an RN?
Utilization review.
And what is utilization review?
We review charts to make sure that we meet Medicare guidelines, make sure patients are in the right statuses when they come into the hospital, deal with the insurance companies to be able to file the insurance, be sure we're Medicare compliant, Medicare and Medicaid compliant.
In your job, are you working at a local hospital?
I am.
Is it in this county?
Yes, it is.
And Ms. McMichael, how long have you been at this job?
At this one, 12 years.
Where did you work prior to doing utilization review?
Prior to utilization review, I was a hospice nurse.
And what does a hospice nurse do?
We take care of end-of-life care, take care of patients who are dying,
Terminally ill patients.
terminally ill,
How long were you a hospice care nurse?
about 10 years.
All told, how long have you been practicing as a licensed registered nurse in the state of Georgia?
36 years, no, 32 years. About 32 years.
And Ms. McMichael, are you married?
I am.
Who are you married to?
To Greg McMichael,
He's one of the defendants in this case. How long have you been married to Greg McMichael?
37 years.
Do you have children with Greg
I
McMichael?
do.
Who are your children?
Travis, who's 34, and Lindsay, who is 30.
Where was Travis living at the time of his arrest in May 2020?
With us.
With us, meaning you and Greg?
Me, Greg and I, yes.
Okay. And where was Lindsay living at that
She
time?
was there also. She
She
was
had-
living with us, Greg and I.
And Lindsay. Both adult children living at
Mhm.
home with you and your husband.
Yes.
How long had he been living with you?
About 2 years, or a year and a half.
I want to get into a little bit about Travis McMichael's background, okay?
Okay.
Let's start with the light of your life, Everett.
Right.
Does Travis have any children?
He has Everett.
Okay. How old is Everett?
He's 4.
4 years old? Okay. I'm going to show you a couple photographs. And I believe the state has copies of all of these. It's Travis McMichael. Your Honor, just so the court knows, because there's 2 McMichaels, we're labeling our exhibits Defendant Travis McMichael, TM number 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, sir. Thank you. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Yes, go Ms. McMichael, take a look at what's been labeled Travis McMichael Exhibit, or TM Exhibit 1, 2, and 3. Do you recognize the images in those photographs?
I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
Travis and Everett.
And how old is, let's start with Defendant's Exhibit number 1. How old is Everett in number 1?
I think he's about 3. His 3rd birthday, I think.
And number 2?
About the same age.
And number 3?
He's younger there, I can't really tell.
Your Honor, at this point, I would tender into evidence Travis McMichael Exhibits 1, 2, and 3.
No objection.
May I publish those for the court? Assuming I can do this correctly. Ms. McMichael, what's depicted in TM number 1?
Number 1,
Yes.
that's out on the dock.
Is that at your home in Brunswick?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And what about, go ahead.
They were just out on the dock that day.
What about in number 2? What's depicted in number 2?
I believe they were getting ready to go out on the boat. They're still on the dock.
Is this a boat that you and your husband own?
Yes.
It's not Travis's boat.
Mm-mm.
And then in number 3, what's depicted in number 3?
That is at Monster Jam.
Travis took
Everett.
to Monster Jam. So tell us what kinds of things Travis and Everett like to do together.
Everything. Fishing, Monster Jam, riding the woods, hunting. Travis takes Everett everywhere he goes.
Is Travis married?
No.
So he's a single dad.
Yes.
And where's Everett's mother live?
Jacksonville.
Okay. What kind of relationship does Travis have with Everett's mom?
They have a good relationship. They are focused on Everett, and they co-share, co-parent.
And do you keep in touch with Everett's mom?
All the time, yes, I do.
And when Travis was at home, was he in touch with Everett's mom?
Yes. Mhm.
What's their custody arrangement?
She has him 1 week, and Travis has him the next week. They meet, and pick him up, and trade him out.
And it's 50-50.
50-50.
And when Everett is with Travis, who's responsible for the financial commitment of a
Travis. Travis pays financial.
When's the last time Everett saw his dad?
May 7th,
2020.
2020.
It's about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
From observing Travis with Everett through the first 4 years of Everett's life, in your opinion, what does Everett mean to Travis?
The world. That's his
Do you-
lifeline.
Do you have any reason to believe that Travis, if granted a bond, would ever run and never see Everett again?
No. Travis would never leave Everett.
Everett's mom, is she here today?
She's not here today.
Why isn't she here?
She was exposed to COVID,
So she's quarantined.
so she's quarantined.
Were you expecting
Yeah, I was expecting to
Everett's
see
mom
her.
to be here?
Yes.
So is she, to your knowledge, supportive?
Yes, she's
Travis.
very supportive of Travis. She's allowing me to see Everett every other weekend, or to take him whenever I want him.
Ms. McMichael, I want to back up a little bit. Where was Travis born?
Brunswick,
Has he lived here all of his life?
he has.
And you said he's 34 years old.
Yes.
Where did he go to high school?
Brunswick High,
Do you know about when he graduated?
2004, I think.
And when he was in high school, was there a time where he was working at a camp associated with your work as a hospice nurse?
Yes, he was working at a camp. It's called Camp Courage.
What's Camp Courage?
It's a bereavement camp for children who have lost a loved one in their family. And they go to a camp for a weekend to for a grief counseling.
And so what was Travis's job or role at Camp Courage?
He was a lifeguard. He was a lifeguard during summers here in Brunswick, and he was a lifeguard at Camp Courage. They hired him because they had a pool that the kids could swim in, and he was allowed to lifeguard at the pool.
Was there ever a time when Travis had to use all of his skills and courage and save a life?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
There was a child at Camp Courage. All the people were in the pool, adults and children, and he was lifeguarding, and he saw a child go to the bottom of the pool, and he jumped in and grabbed the child and pulled him up, saved his life.
Did Travis subsequently receive a kind of a thank you or a letter of commendation from the owner? Let me just finish it, just the court reporter hates when people talk over each other. Did he receive a letter thanking him from the camp director?
He did.
Let me show you what's been labeled as TM, defendant's TM number 4. Now, Coach, is it the court's desire that we have to approach each time?
Yeah, it is my normal practice, just so I know how people are moving approach.
Ms. McMichael, do you recognize that letter?
I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
It's a letter of commendation from Dan Bowen, who was the camp director at that time.
And is it regarding Travis saving the little young boy's life?
It is.
Your Honor, I would tender the evidence TM number 4.
I'm not precisely sure the weight of it, but no objection for our purposes.
Ms. McMichael, could you read that letter to the court?
Yes, sir. Travis, to achieve excellence in anything we do in life is to...
You can skip the word.
Most individuals. The rewards of achieving excellence exceeds monitoring gains. Your performance as lifeguard at Camp Courage on May 3rd, 2003 helped to save a life and was one of excellence. I'm sure as high school is completed, your focus will turn towards the responsibilities of adulthood. I feel confident that these responsibilities will be fared with tenacity and courage. The final reward will be one of success. Thanks for being there. As always, Dan Bowen, Camp Director.
Thank you. After high school, did there come a time when Travis enlisted in the United States Coast Guard?
Yes, it was.
Do you know about what year Travis enlisted?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, Coach Ms. McMichael, I've handed you what's been labeled Defendant Travis McMichael's Exhibit, I believe 6 and 7. And just so everyone knows, I missed 5. It's just inadvertent. There's not going to be a 5. So you have number 6 and 7. Do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
What do you recognize those photographs?
These are Travis in the Coast Guard.
Your Honor, I've taken the evidence, Defendant Exhibit 6 and 7.
We may have a discussion on the weight of them, but no objection for our purposes.
Do you know kind of the rank that Travis achieved in the Coast Guard?
I don't know his rank.
Do you know the kind of work he did in the Coast Guard?
He was a mechanic and a coxswain. I don't know if he was a coxswain or not.
He was a mechanic?
Mechanic.
Okay. What other kind of work do you know that he did while in the Coast Guard?
While in the Coast Guard, he did law enforcement. He was in the Pacific and did drug interdiction, and he also boarded boats when he was here at, there in California, and plus here at Mayport in Jacksonville.
In Jacksonville. Do you know if he did any kind of search and rescue work?
Yes, he did.
I'm going to hand you a kind of a stack of information. And let me, before I do, ask you, did there come a time when you went into, after his arrest, you went into Travis's storage unit and obtained his Coast Guard documents?
Yes, I did.
And then did you provide those documents after reviewing them to me?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to hand you what's been labeled Travis McMichael Exhibits 8 through 27. Okay. Looking through Defendant Travis McMichael's Exhibits 8 through 27, you recognize those exhibits as the documents you provided to me from Travis's storage?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would tender those documents as evidence at this point.
No objection for our purposes.
Starting with number 8.
Okay.
By the way, the photographs that are in 6 and 7, did Travis send those to you? How did you get those photographs? Do you know?
I don't know if he sent them. I don't know. I don't know who the grab got them.
All right, look at number 8.
Okay.
Do you know what number 8 is?
No, except for what I'm reading.
And what is it from what you're reading?
It said he was to all who shall see this presents greeting, know ye that repose in special trust and confidence in the fidelity and activities Travis McMichael, I do appoint him a machinery technician 3rd class in the United States Coast Guard.
So is this his certificate that he achieved machinery technician 3rd class? You have to answer that.
I mean, yes, it is.
Based on what you're reading?
Based on what I'm reading.
Okay, look at the next document.
It's a Good Conduct Award from the Coast Guard.
What year did he receive a Good Conduct Award?
March 2016.
And does this certificate denote that it's in fact his 3rd Good Conduct Award?
Starting. Yes.
Look at the next
Oh,
document.
he's got a second one.
Yeah, look, the next document is number 10. What do you recognize this to be?
A Good Conduct Award, the second one, with a medal.
Okay. Second award. And this, what's the year of this document?
This was the 20th day of March 2013.
2013. And the first one, the 3rd Good Conduct Award, was 2016, correct?
Yes.
Look at number 11. Do you recognize this letter of commendation?
I do not.
You have that?
Do I need to read it to you?
No.
Okay. I have not seen these until
I know did Mrs. Dean participate?
These are...
She's not familiar with the documents, and I understand there's no objection to them coming in.
Right.
We can just identify them on the record if you'd like, instead of having her try to piece together what they are.
Okay, that's fine. And that'll help move things along.
Any objection from the state?
No objection. In fact, I think that would be advisable.
This letter of commendation depicted in Travis McMichael's exhibit number 11 Can you tell from reading it what the commendation is for?
Knowledge, hard work.
Yes.
That's what
Let me give it back to you first. Ms. McMichael, and I'll hand it back to you, is this letter of commendation for Travis for his skill in helping make evacuations during Tropical Storm Bonnie.
Yes.
And what's the date of that letter of commendation?
May 15th, 2012.
Do you see the next letter of commendation?
Yes, May 20th, 2016.
2016. And can you tell from looking at it what his commendation is for?
$45 a month. Assist the Carolina 3, which struck a jetty. I remember this one outside of Jacksonville. They were rescued.
What did Travis rescue?
The people on board of the Carolina 3.
The boat that was in jeopardy.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Looking at number 13, I'm not going to ask you each and every document to read it, but are these other letters of commendation and remarks regarding his good conduct while in the Coast Guard?
Yes.
Look at number 14.
I do remember this one too.
And what is number 14?
Is when he rescued a couple that were on a 48-foot boat that was sinking in the St. Johns River.
A couple of civilians.
Yes.
So tell us what you remember about that.
I just remember that he rescued this elderly couple, and he did get a thank you letter from the family.
The family, and even the grandchildren.
Right.
All right, well, let's look at number 15.
That's the letter from the grandchildren.
So the grandchildren of the couple he saved, whose lives he saved,
Right.
wrote him a thank you letter. And he saved that thank you letter. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
Showed it to you?
No.
You found it in
I
his
found
materials?
it in his box.
Do you know why he didn't show it to you?
He's just humble. He just didn't tell me about all this.
Looking through, starting with number 16, and just scroll through, or go flip through 16 through 26, I believe. Are those certifications showing he's completed courses of work while in the Coast Guard?
They are.
Where was Travis stationed while in the Coast Guard?
He was stationed in Alameda, California, Mississippi, and then Mayport.
Near Jackson.
Right.
And how many years was Travis in the Coast Guard?
Man, I think 9.
While in the Coast Guard, to your knowledge, was he working with people from all races and classes?
Yes, he was.
Did he ever have, to your knowledge, any problems with people that he was working with in the Coast Guard?
No, he did not.
What year did Travis decide to end his career in the Coast Guard?
2016.
And did he leave under good circumstances?
He did.
What did he do after he left the Coast Guard?
He went into well drilling a little bit.
Well drilling? Here in Glenn County?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And then he got a job with Messick Marine, which is a contract company for Kings Bay.
Metson Marine, they have a federal contract to work at the naval base in Kingsland.
Yes, they do.
So Travis came back to Glenn County and was close to you and your husband.
Right.
Up until the time of his arrest in May of 2020, did Travis continually live in Glenn County?
He did.
And of course, you and Mr. McMichael continued to live there as well.
Right.
And during this time period is when he had Everett
He did.
and has that other tie to the community of Everett being.
Right.
What kind of work, if you know, did he do for Metson Marine?
He was started out a mechanic and then a coxswain.
And did he have to get any kind of federal background clearance in order to have that job?
Yes, he did. He had to get one of the highest security clearance federal government.
And he obtained that clearance?
He did.
Ms. McMichael, to your knowledge, does Travis have any criminal record in his entire life?
No.
You're not aware of him ever being arrested?
No.
Was he working for Metson Marine at the time of his arrest?
He was.
And how was he doing while working for Metson, to your knowledge?
He was
Happy?
doing great.
Did he like the job?
He loved it.
Do you know why he loved it?
Because he loves being on the boat. He
Being on
loves
the water.
being on the water. He's good at it.
Did he get along with the people he worked with?
He did.
Did you ever get to meet the people he worked with?
No, I did not.
There came a time you described earlier that he had to move in with you.
Right.
Why did he end up living with you?
Because he had him and Nicole split up, and at that same time period, the house that he was renting, the owner sold it.
So he needed a place
And
to
he at that time did not have this job that he had. And he got arrested and he could not survive, him and Everett, on just one salary. So he moved in with me for help until he could get his feet on the ground.
Okay. While he was living with you, did your neighborhood start to undergo some changes with criminal activity?
Yes, it
Did
did.
you object to relevance?
It's going to go directly to the issue of bond in terms of future dangerousness. Was there an uptick in criminal activity in your neighborhood?
There was.
And how do you know there was an uptick in criminal activity?
Because of, there was that post, neighborhood, Satilla Shores neighborhood post, and also our neighbors talk. I mean, there's somebody breaking into cars, breaking into houses and throughout the neighborhood.
And when you say neighborhood post, you're talking about Facebook posts?
Facebook post, yes.
So there's a neighborhood post, Facebook page. Right? And did you read the Facebook page?
I did.
And did your neighbors read and post on the Facebook page to your knowledge?
They did.
And was Travis made aware of, or Reed himself, or made aware of the posts on the Facebook?
Yes, they were.
During the time in 2018, 2019, would you say is that the time period where there was a rise in crime in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Did you ever know of Travis taking it upon himself to investigate the criminal activity?
No.
Did you ever know of Travis stopping people that he suspected of criminal activity in the neighborhood?
I'm going to object to the relevance as to the issue of bond.
Judge, the state, through its information provided to us in advance of the hearing, intends to get into some of Travis's posts on social media that it claims is relevant to the issue of future dangerousness. Well, I'm not talking about posts, I'm actually talking about actions, which is even more relevant to any issue of future dangerousness. His activities, his actions towards people he suspects or doesn't suspect goes directly to the issue of whether he would pose any danger to anybody if released on bond.
Bear with me a minute. I'm not sure the relevance of this witness. There's a foundational issue that doesn't object to.
And I'm only asking to her knowledge. If she doesn't know, she doesn't know. If she knows, she knows. Did you ever, and if I can proceed, I can try to specify a little bit. Did you ever witness Travis leaving the house to go hunt for criminals that he suspected?
No,
Did you ever witness Travis leaving the house to go investigate the criminal activity after someone posts about burglaries or break-ins? In the
no,
Did you ever witness Travis posting any kind of manifesto of we need to fight for our rights and stop this criminal activity?
no,
During the time he lived with you, did Travis have any physical altercations with people in the neighborhood, to your knowledge?
no,
Did there come a time where Travis actually was himself the victim of the crime in the neighborhood?
yes.
And you remember when that was?
January 1st,
20,
2019, 2020.
Okay. And what happened on January 1st, 2020?
I had to go to work, so my husband moved his truck, Travis's truck. His parked behind me, put it in the side yard, and got out and just forgot to lock the doors again. And within 30 minutes, in the 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, within 30 minutes, someone had stolen a gun out of Travis's truck.
And it was Travis's gun,
Right.
to your knowledge?
Yes,
Did he call the police?
yes,
Did the police come to your house?
they did.
And did Travis cooperate with the police in filling out a report?
He did.
Even after himself being victimized by the property crimes in your neighborhood, did Travis ever, to your knowledge, take it upon himself to investigate that crime?
No,
Did he, to your knowledge, get in any altercations with people either coming into the neighborhood or who already lived in the neighborhood that he suspected of being a perpetrator of the crime?
no,
To your knowledge, did Travis get into any confrontations or altercations before February 11th, 2020?
no, he did not.
In February 11th of 2020, did Travis have occasion again to call 911?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember why?
He saw a man in the house that was being constructed down the street.
And did he come to the house to call 911?
He had to come back and get his cell phone.
So you saw him call 911?
Yeah,
You were home that night?
I was.
Did the police come?
I believe they did, yes.
To your knowledge, did they make any arrests there?
No, they did not.
Did Travis, well, if this court were to grant Travis a bond, could he continue to live with you?
He could, yes.
If the judge thought that that wouldn't be a good idea, are there other places for Travis to live?
There is.
Okay. Do you have family in another state that would allow Travis to live there?
I have, yes, I do.
Okay. Do you have an opinion as to whether, if granted bond, Travis would flee the jurisdiction of this court?
Travis would go nowhere
Why do you think that?
because he loves home, he loves his son, and he will stand up to his responsibility, and he wants his day in court.
Ms. McMichael, have friends of yours approached you about their willingness to post property
Yes, I
to
have.
secure bond in this case?
Yes.
How many friends are you aware of that are willing to put up their own houses or their own property to secure bond?
4.
4 different friends. Do you have any idea of how much equity those friends, or the total equity in the properties?
$400,000, I think.
$400,000 in equity that the combined families have.
And then a little more because someone else, the 4th one just came up. So I don't know how much equity is in that property.
And the people that are willing to put up their property, and I think the court will hear from some of them, are they living in Glenn County?
They do.
And are they involved in the community in Glenn
They
County?
are.
Ties to this community?
They are.
And willing to put up their own property?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all. If I can, one question. Do you know if Travis McMichael has a passport?
He does not.
He does not. Thank you.
So my understanding, we shared this by email, that she's essentially a joint witness for the defense. So
We're going to let them put on their case in chief, and then we'll recall her in our case in chief. And Your Honor, since they're in their case in chief, I want to step out for just a moment.
good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
You and I have not met each other. My name is Jesse Evans, and I'm a prosecutor with the state. I know this is difficult today for you, but I need to ask you some questions about your testimony and about Mr. McMichael today, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
First of all, goes without saying that you love your son, correct?
Of course.
And you're a supporter of his.
I am.
And is it fair to say that you do not personally know all of the facts of this particular case? You know what you've heard, but you weren't present, for example, at the scene of the shooting, correct?
I wasn't at the scene of the shooting.
Okay.
Right.
And you've talked about having family that lived with you at the time of this particular situation back in February 23rd of 2020. Identify everyone that was living in your home at that time.
It's Greg, Travis, Lindsay, and myself, and every other week Everett.
Okay. And when Everett was not with you, that's because he was staying with his mother, correct?
Correct.
And what is her name? Is she Nicole?
Nicole.
Okay. And in raising Travis, I assume that part of your raising him, you taught him the difference between right and wrong, correct?
Absolutely.
Do you agree that at the time of this shooting, he was 30 years old and a grown man, correct?
Yes.
And certainly capable, just like other adult humans, of making choices.
Absolutely.
You had talked about some evidence that was presented by the defense. Some of it you don't have any firsthand knowledge of, correct?
Oh,
The documents.
the documents, right.
Right. Is that the first time you saw some of those documents today?
When I pulled them out of the things, yes.
Okay. And I want to get back to a point that you made earlier, because I'm going to talk to you about resources in just a moment.
Okay.
At some point, you indicated that Travis had to move back into you because there were some financial problems, correct?
Correct.
Did he lose a job?
No. He lost his job when he got arrested.
Okay.
Before he got arrested, 2 days before.
2 days before he got arrested. Okay. And why is it that he lost his job?
Because of this.
So at the time that defendant moved in with you, preceding the shooting of this case, money was tight for him, is that correct?
It was.
Okay. And in addition to your husband, you also had Lindsay, your daughter, adult daughter, living with you
That's
as well,
right.
correct? You said a term on your direct when you were being asked about things going on in the neighborhood, and the quote that I put down is that you said somebody is breaking into cars. You're aware that there's been an investigation into multiple people breaking into cars and things like that in your neighborhood.
I don't know if it was multiple people. I just know there was cars being broken into.
Okay. And then you were asked some questions about things that you know and things that you don't know about Travis and his activities and thoughts. Is it fair to say that he didn't share everything with you? You don't know all of his inner thoughts and inner choices, correct?
Of course not.
I want to focus your attention on February 11th before we get into some other matters here. You talked about a situation where defendant Travis McMichael called 911 after he went back to his house and get a cell phone, correct?
Right.
You're aware that on that night he also got a firearm in your husband, correct?
Right.
Okay. And just to be clear, when that 911 call was placed, police arrived, right?
Right.
Okay. And they took a report, correct?
Right.
And nobody died.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about money for a second here. Tell me your source of income. I know that you said that you're a registered nurse, correct?
I'm a registered nurse, yes.
Okay. And at the time of the commission of these crimes, you were renting your home at the time. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's not a home that you and your husband, Travis, owned, correct?
Correct.
You don't have to give me the street address right now, but are you in a rental home now, or do you currently own a house?
Rental home.
Rental home. You had talked about having friends that were willing to put up their property, and that's kind of why I dovetail into this question. Is it fair to say that you don't have any real property, you as a family, that you could put up in support of bond for either Travis McMichael or for Greg McMichael?
That's correct.
And you talked about this $400,000 in equity, $400,000 plus is what I wrote down because there's an additional house, correct? That would be funds that are available between the two of the defendants. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So, if granted bond in this particular case, do you have any idea of what their income, the defendant's income, would be? We'll focus on Travis McMichael for right now.
For right now, Travis wouldn't have income.
He doesn't have a job, so if
Right.
he gets out of custody, he has no sources of income.
Right, not right now.
Okay. And then I understand that counsel in this particular case has been retained. Is that correct?
Yes.
You as a family hired counsel for both defendants?
Yes.
Okay. How is it that you all as a family were able to come up with the funding sources to retain the defense attorneys in this case?
Objection, Mr. Collins.
It goes to funding sources, Judge, and their means, their ability to post a bond. It also goes to roots in the community and some of the other factors that the court must pass upon.
Not sure how they retain counsel goes to
Well, let's focus on bond. I understand that what is being proposed by this witness is for third parties to post property. I don't want to get into where it being paid for. That's what is being proposed here, at least to the witness. I don't know where we are. Finally, let's stay away from counsel and retaining and all of the different ways that can go.
Understood, Judge. Let me ask you about you as a family and your savings, your retirement, your investments. Can you identify for the court what sort of means you all have that could be of assistance in assessing bond in this
We
case?
have none at this point.
No real estate.
No.
Is your husband, I know he's retired, correct?
Yes.
Is that a funding source for you as a family as well?
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned something that I want to go back to. You talked about having relatives in other states that Travis McMichael in particular could live with. What's that other state that you were referring to?
Okay.
What other?
Florida.
Florida. Okay, so you have relatives in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Are they close relatives?
Yes, they're very close.
And what are the relationships of those relatives to Travis McMichael?
Uncle.
Uncle, okay, you're very close. What other states do you have relatives?
Louisiana.
All right, and what kind of relative lives there in Louisiana, and describe the nature of that relationship?
Uncle.
I'm sorry?
Uncle.
Uncle, okay. And close relationship there too?
Yes.
Can you please articulate for the court, I know you've talked a little bit about Coast Guard service for Travis McMichael. Can you tell the court whether defendant Travis McMichael has ever left the state of Georgia?
Has he ever left the state?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
the Coast Guard.
And specifically, can you identify for the court any places that he's been traveled to overseas?
No. I don't think he's been anywhere overseas.
You don't think he's been
No.
overseas? All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about a jail recording between yourself and Travis McMichael. And I know this is not a surprise that I'm going to ask you about this. You're aware that there are certain jail recordings that we've recovered, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Not just between your son and you, but also between your husband and you, correct? And in fact, there is a admonishment at the beginning of each recording that says these phone calls are being
Right.
recorded. Since we've talked a little bit about Lindsay, you're certainly aware of the fact that she snapped a picture of the crime scene from February the 23rd and posted it on social media.
I am aware.
Okay. And I gather from discussions that that was a topic of discussion between you, Travis McMichael, and your husband, correct?
Yeah.
Specifically, there was a time when you spoke to your son where he had a discussion about her needing to take down her social media involving posts pertaining to this case.
Yeah.
Okay. Are Florida and Louisiana the only states to which you have relatives that are outside of the state of Georgia?
Yes.
And I asked you about retirement funds and investments, and I think I geared it towards your husband, Greg McMichael. What about your son, Travis McMichael? Can you identify any assets or significant?
Yes, none.
Okay, no investments that you're aware of? No sizable retirement income or anything like that? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Any reader?
Ms. McMichael, do you know if Travis would be willing to waive extradition if the judge wanted him to live in one of these other states?
Yes, he would be willing.
Do you know if he would be willing to be under house arrest so he wouldn't actually leave the house that he was informing the court he was
He
going
would
to
be willing.
Does he have any money on which to survive if he were to flee?
He has a little bit.
How much?
About $6,000.
$6,000. That's all his life savings?
That's it. That's everything.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything on those issues, Mr.?
No, sir.
Thank you. You said that.
Ready?
your seat. On behalf of Travis McMichael, we call Sean Sawyer, please.
Sean Sawyer?
Yes, Your Honor. Sean Sawyer. Sit there and face this nice lady over here. She's going to swear to God.
Right.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sawyer, if you have a seat. And we've been informed by the court that you can take your mask down.
Okay.
So we can see your face. Very good. Could you tell us your full name?
Sean Lee Sawyer,
And Sean, how old are you?
35,
Where do you live?
here in Brunswick,
Okay. How long have you lived here in Brunswick?
since '92.
What kind of work do you do, Mr. Sawyer?
I'm a field service mechanic.
All right, what does that mean?
Work on diesel equipment in the woods, out in the field.
Who do you do that work for?
John Deere, Flint equipment.
Okay. What type of customers do you have? Like corporate customers, residents, farmers?
It's a little bit of everybody. I mean, you got some farmers, we got a lot of construction guys, logging, we do a lot of logging equipment. Pretty much all walks of life.
All right, now, are you employed with that particular company?
Yes,
You
sir.
own that particular company?
I work for them.
Okay. Do you own your own business?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you do any other kind of work?
Side jobs, odds and ends for people. I help my friends and anybody in need. I work on trucks and pretty much anything mechanical I do.
Okay. How long have you been doing that kind of work?
Since 2010.
All right. And how do you know Travis McMichael?
I've known Travis since high school.
All right. And when were y'all in high school together?
Yeah, I was a grade or two above him, but him and my wife were really close, and that's how which I knew him from school, but we hung out time to time through high school, and as we got older, we hung out more, hunted together and stuff.
Okay, that's my next question is what kind of things have y'all done together since high school?
We mostly hunted together. We've done some fishing together, but mostly hunting, hanging out. We've been to parties together and stuff like that.
And
Go out to eat.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just go out to eat. He's been to my house, been to his house. That kind of stuff.
Okay, and have you done those types of social things together from the time that you've known him back in high school and with your wife?
Yes.
Okay. Does that include family events?
I hadn't really been around much family of his until the last probably 4 years or so when he come home from the Coast Guard.
Okay. So when he came home from the Coast Guard, what types of things would y'all do together?
Well, he got back into hunting when he got home, and we hunted together regularly.
Okay. You ever met his son, Everett?
Yes,
Or his mother and father?
I have.
His sister, Lindsay?
Yes,
Have you spent time with them at their home?
yes.
What
In the
types of-
recent years, yes.
In the last 4 years, just so that we can understand how you know him and the types of things y'all have done together, how much time would you say you spend together or talk to Travis over the course of a week or a month?
I would talk to him a couple of times a week, and it averaged, there would be, we may go a week or two and not speak, and then we would hang out, in the off season. During deer season, of course, we were together, every weekend.
Okay. In the time that you've gotten to know him and spent time with him, have you developed an opinion about what kind of person Travis McMichael is?
Yeah.
And in terms of that opinion, have you found him to be an honest and truthful person?
Yes, very much so.
Have you found him to be a violent person?
No, never.
Explain that.
He's always been a comedian, class clown, always wanted to make somebody laugh, always willing to help somebody in need. I've never seen him get out of sorts with anybody.
When you say willing to help somebody in need, what do you mean by that?
anything. I mean, if a stranger on the side of the road with a blowed out tire, if he, thought he could help, he would stop and help. I mean,
Do you know Travis to exclude a person in need based on their race or their background?
no, never.
What kind of money they have or not?
No.
When you say that he's class clown, what do you mean by that?
Oh, just love to joke and cut up. He wants everybody to laugh and have a good time. He's the life of the situation, whether it's, you couldn't be serious around him. He wanted to make everything funny.
Okay. Had he at any point in time ever shared with you some of the frustrations or the emotions that he was having about what was going on in his neighborhood with crime?
No, we'd never, other than I knew his pistol was stolen, he had told me about that, but no, as far as any details, we'd never really talked about any of that stuff.
Did he ever make any statements to you that he was developing some kind of plan to go out and solve the crime himself in his neighborhood?
No, never.
Have you ever known him to be the kind of person to go out and seek to, intervene in the community like that in ways that were violent or hurtful to other people?
I've never seen him be that way, no.
Have you ever worked with Travis or seen him as a worker?
Not on an actual job. Doing odds and ends things together, working around the hunting club and things like that was always, he was always very active, very work. He had a very strong work ethic, I guess. So.
How is it that you came to see that?
Just being with him. Watching him, do what he does.
Had you ever talked with other people that he worked with or seen him work with others?
No, not. I didn't really. Other than our group, he worked with a buddy of ours at one time.
Okay.
But other than that, no.
Worked with a buddy of yours doing what kind of work?
Well drilling.
Oh, okay. I think we can address that with the So, if the court is going to give Travis a bond and let him out, are you available to assist Travis in coming to court or in abiding by the conditions of bond?
Yes.
Which could be that he has to keep a curfew. Are you willing to be a part of his life to assist him in those things?
Yes.
Do you think that Travis, that you have just talked all the ways that you know him, would be the kind of person who would run away and flee the jurisdiction of this court before trial?
No.
Why do you feel he would not do that?
Because I think he's a man of his word and a man of honor, and if he's going to stand for whatever it is. If it's right or wrong or whatever, he's going to take his consequences the way they come.
What about if the court is concerned that he might go out and try to threaten or intimidate witnesses, meaning people who might know facts about this case? Is he the kind of person, in your opinion, that would go up and be confrontational with others and threaten others?
No, I don't.
Why do you have that opinion?
Because, to me, he's always been more of a kind of stayed to himself, stayed, with friends. And, he loved to go to the woods. He would spend a lot of time in the woods scouting and just being by himself. He loved nature, loved being outside. So I don't feel like he would do that.
Have you ever experienced Travis trying to obstruct justice or the work of police officers or community officers who are here to benefit the community or make sure that justice is carried out?
No, I haven't.
Why do you feel, what do you have an issue with? Okay. Are you willing to assist if the court gives Travis a bond in trying to find other residents who may be willing to put up property or put up money to assist Travis in making that bond?
Yes, I would.
Nothing further.
Sure.
Just very briefly. Mr. Sawyer, my name is Jesse Evans. I'm a prosecutor with the state. I've got just a few questions for you, but not a whole lot. These hunting excursions that you mentioned, do they usually involve firearms?
Yes.
And you know Travis McMichael to own, possess, and use firearms, correct?
Correct.
And what types of firearms have you personally hunted with him with?
Shotgun and rifles.
Shotguns, rifles. You know him to have handguns as well?
That's correct.
Okay. And I want to talk about your relationship with him. With Travis McMichael, it's a pretty good relationship. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. You're a supporter of his.
Yes.
No matter what he would do, you would be there as his friend to support him. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You certainly wouldn't want to see anything bad happen to him.
That's correct.
Do you agree that you do not know all of the facts in this case? You're not an eyewitness, personal witness, or anything like that. You only know what you've heard about. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And in terms of your knowledge of Travis and your opinion about him, that's based on your personal observations and interactions with him. Accurate?
Correct.
Okay. There certainly is the possibility that there are things about Travis McMichael that you don't know because he hasn't shared them with you or you haven't personally observed them. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And you, if I understand it, have had fairly regular communications with Travis McMichael since he's been locked up. Have you had jail phone calls with him?
Just a few.
Okay. And Ashley Sawyer, is that your wife?
That's my wife, yes.
Your property that do you own it, or is it rental property?
I own it. I mean, it's not completely paid for, but I own it, yes.
You have equity in the
Yes.
Okay. And if the court were to exercise its discretion to grant bond to Travis McMichael, are you saying that you would be willing to put that house up for him?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned something briefly about your time in the woods with him. Did you ever go camping with Travis McMichael?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we used to camp. We all camped on the river when we were in high school. I haven't camped with him in the recent years, but back in high school, we all used to camp at the river.
Multiple successive nights or overnight trips? What are we talking about?
Yeah, a couple nights, usually Friday and Saturday.
Okay. So you personally have been involved in situations where Travis has lived in the woods and kind of gone out camping and things like that as part of these hunting excursions. Okay. You were asked the kind of general question that you would take some responsibility and role in assuring that defendant Travis McMichael would get to court, right?
Yes.
Explain, please, what your thought process on that is. How are you specifically, as an individual, going to assure that that's going to happen?
Well, I mean, I would, whatever it took to get him here, I mean, to make sure that he showed up to take care of his business, whatever it needed to be, whether it would be a ride or stay at my house until time being, or whatever the case would be. I would do whatever needed to be done.
You work full time, correct?
I do.
Often, I assume because you're full time, you're away from the house when you're working, correct?
That's correct.
And what about your wife, Ashley? Does she also work outside the home?
Yes.
Do you have children by chance?
I do.
Are they adult? Are they minor?
They're minors.
Minor. Okay. Do they go to school?
Yes.
Okay. So there are significant periods of the day where you, your wife, and your children are out of school, at least when we don't have a pandemic, correct?
Correct.
And I'm not sure, what's the status of Glenn County schools? Is that where you live?
Yeah, we're in.
Okay, you're in school.
Yes.
So on a daily basis, they either go to school and that you're taking them to the car line, or they're getting picked up by a bus, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
I have nothing further. Thanks. Step down. Thank you.
This time out of the so they're not released for discussion testimony. Okay. And just do that. That's it.
Your Honor. Has to use the restroom.
There's a restroom request from
One of the Michael, you need to use the restroom.
Let's do this. I'm trying to, let's figure out amongst them two. You indicated 5.
We have 3 more.
3 more.
of that length.
Of that one. Okay, why don't we can accommodate the jail. Okay to finish up those witnesses before lunch.
State's fine with that.
Yes. Go ahead and do that. All right, to the jail. We're going to remain on. Y'all take a moment, and then the moment the McMichaels are back on from the jail, we'll continue.
Judge, I'm going to step out briefly while they do that.
Your Honor, proceed. Jesse.
I'll wait.
One of the things that we have arranged at the preliminary hearing is that when court's not in session, and we're not actively presenting to the court, that we not be filmed, and that we go out, talk, and move about the courtroom, and not be filmed by media. That was something that the previous judge granted, because there's obviously arranging, wrangling witnesses and things of that nature. We'd like to have the same benefit this time, if that's all right with you, Your Honor.
I defer to the court. I don't have a problem one way or another. We're certainly being mindful of the fact that there are cameras and mics in the courtroom, but I defer to the court whether you want to give instructions to the media on that.
I join Mr. Sheffield's request that the cameras don't film during the break. And I have one other camera issue.
All right, well, I'll tell you this, in a situation like this where we're still technically in open court, I'm not going to shut down cameras or mics. During recesses, I don't have a problem because there's a subtle difference there, but real from the standpoint of public access. So when the court is not in session, I don't have any problem with going ahead and instructing media that we will not be televising or live streaming when we're out of session. And that should address the issue.
That's what
May I bring one other issue to your attention? I received an email from a lawyer in my office to say that what is laid on this podium is being live streamed. So unfortunately, most of what we'll be laying here are exhibits before they've been introduced. After you described that document, you and I were talking around during my motion. So I'm not sure how we change the view of the camera.
It's the media camera, Your Honor, not the court
For
camera.
the media
As
camera.
I said, the court camera.
Yeah, you can hardly even see me on the court camera, but somehow the media's gotten some way to film what's going on here.
Is there a way of angling the podium?
They tell me I cannot move this podium.
So I don't know about this one, it's fixed.
It's fixed.
But do you agree with me that you are seeing what
It is, yeah, unless I'm,
so it's what I have here. So Mr. Rubin's notes for his direct examination are visible, and my exhibits before I actually tender them are visible to the world. I ask that we somehow do something to correct that.
Your Honor, we can rotate it, if that helps.
Yeah, let's try to rotate it to see, let's just check. And to the live feed, you understand the court's instruction on when we're in recess?
Oh, okay.
Sometimes, the simplest solution is the best.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Your Honor.
If there's nothing more, Judge, I'm going to step out for a second.
Yes. You look comfortable.
Just to be clear, we haven't released any witnesses at this point. Right now. This is the time question.
Right, I understand you.
Back to the jail, I see both Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael. Can you both hear and see me?
Yes, Your Honor.
We have two back, as the court indicated. We would just go back straight into the evidence. And you go forward.
Correct.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Would you state your, I'm sorry, we're ready for something. Would you state your name for the record?
Ashley Sawyer,
And Miss Sawyer, spell your first name because it's a little different.
ASHLEE.
Two E's.
Yes, sir.
And you're the wife of Sean Sawyer.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been married to Sean?
13 years.
You had to think about it.
We've been together longer.
How long have you been together with Sean?
17 years.
Where do you live? Not address, but county, city.
Brunswick.
And how long have you lived in Brunswick?
My whole life.
Born and raised here.
Yes, sir.
You go to Brunswick High School.
Yes, sir.
What kind of work do you do, Miss Sawyer?
Medical assistant.
And what kind of, without naming the practice, what kind of practice is it?
Skin.
Dermatology practice.
Yes, sir.
And what are your duties as a medical assistant?
I interact with patients and treat patients alongside of the providers.
Do you know Travis McMichael?
Yes, sir.
How do you know Travis?
I've known Travis since middle school.
About 7th, 8th grade?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship with Travis?
I would consider him my best friend.
Have you remained friends from middle school till today?
Yes, sir.
How often, before he was arrested, did you interact with Travis?
Probably 3 or 4 times a week.
And how would you interact with him?
phone calls, birthday parties, family gatherings, vacation, hunting, fishing.
Do you hunt?
Yes, sir.
Do you fish?
Yes, sir.
You've done those with Travis McMichael.
Yes, sir.
Do you, and you said you've gone on vacations with him. What kind of vacations?
Family vacations.
You and Sean and Travis with Nicole?
Not with Nicole, no, sir.
Okay, so since the break.
Yes, sir.
How would you describe Travis McMichael?
Happy,
Why happy?
because he is the happiest person I've ever met. Wants to make everybody else laugh and have fun.
Have you ever seen him instigate confrontations with people?
Never.
Have you ever seen him take it upon himself to play the role of police officer?
Never.
Did he ever share with you his concerns about crime in his neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
And how would he share those?
He just spoke about how they were having a lot of break-ins throughout the several months prior to anything happening.
Did were you aware of the break-in of his own truck?
Yes, sir.
And how were you aware of that?
Just speaking to him on a daily basis, he said that they had break-ins at their own house and in his truck.
Did he express any frustration with the ability to catch the perpetrator or perpetrators?
No, sir.
Do you know if or has he ever expressed to you a willingness or a desire to hunt down the perpetrator himself?
Never.
Did he ever talk to you after his arrest on February 20, I'm sorry, not his arrest, but the incident on February 23rd, about the incident?
Yes, sir.
Did he ever talk to you about any desire to flee the jurisdiction of this court?
No, sir.
Did he ever express any desire that if he got arrested, he would face trial? That he would stay and stand up?
Yes, sir.
What did he say?
That he was fully aware of what happened, that he didn't feel like anything that he'd done was on the wrong side of the law, that they were willing to face whatever they needed to.
So there was a couple months between February 23rd, obviously, and his arrest on May 7th. Are you aware, or did he express to you any indications that he was trying to get out of the jurisdiction or leave Wayne County?
No, sir.
Leave the state of Georgia?
No, sir.
Act in any way to intimidate witnesses to the shooting?
No, sir.
Or the surrounding circumstances to the shooting?
No, sir.
Did he ever express to you any kind of hate for classes of people or types of people in general?
No, sir.
You've talked to him on jail calls since he's been in jail?
Yes, sir.
How often do you talk to him?
I've talked to him 4 times since he's been in jail.
Has he ever expressed to you in those jail calls a desire to, if he got out on bond, he was going to hit the road?
No, sir. All he's ever said is he wants to see his son.
His son Everett. You know Everett.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any children?
Yes, sir.
How old are your children?
12 and 7.
Do they sometimes play with Travis's son?
Yes, sir.
When you're together?
Yes, sir.
Do you know his feelings towards his son Everett?
Yes, sir.
From how? How do you know his feelings? That's a bad question.
Just being around them, the love that he gives that child, and my children and any other children around.
Would you say he's a good father?
An excellent father.
Do you have any concerns that if he were released on bond, that he would pose any kind of danger to the community?
No, sir.
We've heard that you hunt, your husband Sean hunts, Travis hunts. He had, prior to his arrest, weapons, shotgun, rifle, handgun. Do you think there'd be any problem with a ban on possessing weapons if the court were to impose that condition of bond? I think Travis would give up his gun.
I feel like he would if that's what it takes to get out.
Thank you, Ms. Sawyer.
Ms. Sawyer, Jesse Evans, the prosecutor with the state. don't have many questions for you. The hunting that you referred to, that was with firearms, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And just estimate, how many occasions have you gone hunting with Travis McMichael?
Over the years, 10, 15.
You all are close enough that you've got a good tight relationship. Best friend is how you identified it, correct?
Yes, sir.
The vacations that your families went on together, where were those ever out of the state of Georgia?
In Florida.
Florida? Okay, what part of Florida?
In Steenhatchee.
Great. And you're aware that he has an uncle that lives down in Florida as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
I learned about a relative that lives in Louisiana as well. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
Okay. And you talked about speaking with the defendant, Travis McMichael, after this happened. Did I get this quote correct? You said he's willing to face whatever he needed to. Is that essentially what he told you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that he also thought that he did no wrong in this case. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You were asked some questions about hating groups. Is it fair to say that when it comes to knowing what Travis McMichael's thoughts are on particular things, you only know what you observed and what he shared with you? Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. It may be that if he had some thoughts regarding different things that you haven't seen or haven't heard come from his mouth, that you may not be aware of those things, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Any? No, sir. Thank you, ma'am. You just got
All right. Thank you. Got it.
But, hang on, is that, oh, you were bringing them up, I didn't, I called them.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't call them up. I was just waiting for the court to give me the okay sign.
Yeah,
I
well,
proceed.
We're far enough along in the process, yeah. If we could just make sure that we call the witness.
Yeah, I have called, yes, sir.
All right, just-
Okay, we, on behalf of Travis, Mike, we call Zach Blank.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Jack, you can have a seat, you can remove your mask.
Yeah, and I think there's also this, we need to make sure, you know, when witnesses are and are not in the courtroom, so we can be careful about that. The witness is in the courtroom now.
Yes.
No, I'm just coming.
I understand what the court is saying, yes.
Keep the witnesses out of the courtroom
Until we call for the actual witness. We will do that, Your Honor. Zach, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us your full name?
Zachary Total Langford,
And Zach, how old are you?
35,
Where are you from?
Brunswick, Georgia.
How long have you continued to live in Brunswick your whole life?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What kind of work do you do?
I work for a well drilling company,
All right, what are your responsibilities?
maintenance on municipal wells, house wells, equipment, welding.
Okay, I mean personal residence wells
Yes,
as
sir.
well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and where does your work take you? Is it just within Brunswick or do you go outside that?
I go from Ocean Forest to Alma to,
Do you know Travis McMichael?
yes, sir.
How do you know him?
I've known him for 30 plus years.
All right, how old would that make you both when you first met him, do you think?
5, 6.
Okay. Well, we've had Miss Sawyer here claiming to be his best friend. Do you disagree with that, or?
Yes, sir.
All right, are y'all close? You and Travis?
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
Okay. How close would you say that you are?
He's my best friend.
So you're in competition. All right. So tell me, what types of things do you and Travis do together?
hunt, fish. I mean, just a multitude of things.
Do you spend family time together?
I mean, we have dinner together, families have dinner together. I mean, yeah.
Are you married?
Yes, sir.
Do you have kids?
Yes, sir.
How many children do you have?
I have 2
Okay. Under the age of?
under the age of 10.
Do you know Travis's son, Everett?
Yes, sir.
What about his parents? Do you know Travis's parents?
Yes, sir.
Do y'all spend time together with your children and your families?
Yes, sir.
What type of time does that include? Is it just dinner at each other's houses? Do y'all travel together?
But just dinner, cookout, just hanging out.
About how many times a month would you say, or a week would you say, that you talk with Travis or spend time with Travis?
I mean, I talk to him on a daily basis. Spend time with him on weekends, weeknight, you know.
Have you ever worked together?
Yes, sir.
What type of work did y'all do together?
He worked at the wheel drilling company with myself.
All right, so you were able to observe him as a worker.
Yes, sir.
How long did y'all work together at that company?
2.5 years, 2 years.
Did you see how he worked with others?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And by others, I mean people of different backgrounds, different races, different sort of status, community, all that.
Yes, sir.
How would you classify or qualify the way that he worked with others from different backgrounds?
He got along with everybody. I never saw him argue with anybody.
Did you find that he was respectful or not?
Well, he was respectful, yes, sir.
All right, can you explain that?
He never not did what he was told to do by the gentleman that he worked with. You know, they never argued with each other, fussed or fought or anything. I mean, he, yes sir, no sir, did what he was told.
Have you worked with him in any other capacity other than the well drilling company?
No, sir.
Okay, so in that working environment and in that social environment growing up together, have you come to develop an opinion about what Travis's reputation in the community is, not just what you think about him, but in the community, about him being an honest, trustworthy person?
Yes, sir.
And what is that reputation?
And not a lot of people out there that don't trust him, that wouldn't trust him to do anything. I mean, he's never belittled anyone, I guess, to the point where it would be they didn't like him.
So on that, have you ever seen him be confrontational with somebody to try to cause an argument or cause a fight?
Never.
What about his reputation for being a violent person?
He's not.
Okay, why do you say that?
I've known him 30 plus years and I've never seen him mad one time. Mad to a fight. I've never seen him.
How would you describe his personality?
Funny, outgoing, wants to make you laugh, wants to make everybody laugh.
Did Travis ever share with you that his neighborhood was having some issues with break-ins or problems?
Yes, sir.
Were you aware that he had gotten a gun stolen from him? Did he share that with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did he ever lose his temper about that or swear vengeance or violence against those people in this community that were committing those crimes?
No, sir.
Is that the kind of person that you know him to be?
No.
After the shooting incident that happened on the 23rd, did Travis share with you anything about how that shooting and that death made him feel?
He felt remorse. He didn't like what happened.
Did he express to you about whether it caused him, sleeping problems or emotional problems that he was sad about, anything like that? Did he share that with you, I guess is my question.
Yes, sir. He talked about he was having trouble sleeping. Lost his appetite, I know, for a couple of days, a week or so. He felt remorse for it.
Okay. Are you aware whether or not Travis has friends that fall across the diversity of our community, and whether he's got personal relationships with people who are black, white, and other?
Yes, sir. A couple.
Have you seen him in those relationships?
Yes, sir. One. Okay,
in
and
particular.
how would you describe that friendship?
Just same friendship me and that same fella had. I mean, he was no different. He never treated him different, never.
Do you have any core beliefs or way that you were raised that's in common with Travis about how you treat people?
Treat everybody with respect. How I was raised. And I mean, he was too. I'm around him long enough to know his father was in the same boat mine was. And always have respect for your elder, everybody, until, I mean, they give you a reason not to respect them. But always.
Did you ever see him get violent against people of color?
No.
One of the considerations that the court is here to determine today is whether or not to let Travis have a bond. Part of that consideration is to try to determine if Travis is the kind of guy who was going to run away if he were to be given a bond. Essentially flee the jurisdiction of this court. Do you have any opinion about whether or not the Travis McMichael you know is the type of person that would run away from this problem or flee the jurisdiction of the court?
No.
What is your opinion about whether he would do that?
He would not do it.
Why do you think he wouldn't do that?
He's got more sense than that. I mean, he's not gonna mess anything up. I mean, he just wouldn't do it. He's gonna abide by the law. If the law tells him to stay where he's supposed to stay, he's gonna stay where he's supposed to stay.
What about the court's concern that he might just go out there in the community and start confronting potential witnesses in this case and try to intimidate those people to testify a certain way or not to say certain things when they come to court? Do you think that Travis McMichael is the kind of person that would do that?
No, sir.
Why not?
He's not that way. He's not going to do anything outside of the scope of whatever he's told not to do. If he's told not to do anything, that's what's going to happen.
Have you and your wife discussed whether or not you would be willing to assist Travis in making a bond in terms of the financial responsibilities associated with that?
Yes, sir.
You would be willing to do that?
Yes, sir.
And what all have you discussed that you would be willing to do?
My property, both of my properties that I own or have.
Where are those properties located in terms of this county? Are they in Glenn County?
Yes, sir.
In Brunswick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you own both of those properties?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that by putting up your property means you need to sign the deed over to the court? To lose those properties, if Travis McMichael decides to flee the jurisdiction of the court, that those things could be forever taken from you to satisfy his return to court. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
And are you still willing to put up those properties?
Yes, sir.
Do you know of others who are willing to do that?
Yes, sir.
Another one of the questions that I have for you is, Travis needs to come to court.
Yes.
He needs to be here and be on time and always be present. Are you willing to assist him, whether it's just giving him a ride or being his alarm clock that morning or making sure that he's in the right mindset to abide by all the rules and conditions of being on bond?
Yes, sir.
If the court decided that he wanted to be put on house arrest, would you be willing to let him live at your house?
Yes, sir.
If the court decided that he needed to be on an ankle monitor, which requires a cost, a daily cost, would you be willing to help him financially with that daily cost?
As much as I could, yes, sir.
Okay. If Travis was able to get a bond and not be on home confinement and work and be employed, does he have the type of skills that you're aware of that you think he could work around Glenn, Brunswick to make money to support himself?
Yes, sir.
Do you know of people who would be willing to give him a job?
Right off. I mean, I probably could think of a couple, but I mean, that's not. Can't say for sure they would, but
it's been a touchy political case.
Yes, sir.
And that's impacted everybody.
It's impacted everybody, yes, sir.
I understand. But it's your opinion, though, that he has the kind of skills to make money and you would try to help him work if you could?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Don't have anything further? Mr. Evans has some questions.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Langford, my name is Jesse Evans. I'm a prosecutor with the state. You and I have not had a chance to talk. but I understand that you talked regularly with defendant based on your testimony prior to his arrest, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you couched your relationship with him as being best friends. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
And you were interviewed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations regarding this case back on May the 13th of 2020. And at that time, you indicated that you knew the defendant since he was 4 years old.
Yes, sir.
That being Travis McMichael, since we have multiple defendants here, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you also know Greg McMichael?
Well, yeah, being associated with Travis.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You were asked a question about relationships that Travis McMichael might have with minorities, and I think you said that you know of one black friend that he has. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can't think of any others.
I know two, but one that he was more prevalent to be around than the other.
I got you. Well, let's focus on who Travis McMichael knew. I want to ask you about this property that you just given testimony about. You said you have 2 pieces of property. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are they both here in Glenn County?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony is that if he was granted bond, he being Travis McMichael, you'd be willing to put up your property in support of his bond, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then candidly, when you were asked about work, you know Travis McMichael has no job right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there's no guaranteed work for him if you were granted bond, correct?
Correct.
To your knowledge, he doesn't own any house or any assets out in the community at present, correct? Okay. I want to ask you, since the topic was brought up, first of all, you're a supporter of Travis McMichael, correct? You're on his behalf.
Yes, sir.
And whatever happens in this case, you'll continue to be a supporter of his just as a lifelong friend, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You'll admit, though, you don't know all of the facts of this case. You know what defendant Travis McMichael told you afterwards, correct?
The facts that I've heard come out, media and other sources, yes, sir.
One of the things that you told law enforcement is that you know that Travis McMichael knows the difference between right and wrong because he's has somewhat of a background in that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also told the Georgia Bureau of Investigations that you know that Travis McMichael regularly carries a firearm.
Yes, sir.
You'd seen him
Judge, just as a matter of fact, he's testifying about what the witness told earlier. I think that's improper. Why he just asked the witness these questions? This feels like this is improper impeachment. He just should ask the witness what he knows instead of telling the witness what he told somebody else. I think it's improper impeachment, if that's what it is.
I'm not sure that it's impeachment, but this is cross-examination, so.
Cross-examination.
I think so, Your Honor. Yeah, he's telling him what he told somebody else when he's got the witness here. He can just cross-examine the witness about what he knows. And I would certainly orient him.
Which was my question.
Orient him at least to his prior statements so that he can have the ability to see what he told those people if he needs that.
We heard it differently. I heard a couple of questions ago a question which was there not an interview with the FBI? And my understanding of this line of questioning was going through points in that interview.
That's correct, and it was GBI.
I'm sorry, it's not GBI. Just raise that in those terms.
Sure. You'd seen Travis McMichael carry a firearm regularly.
Actually, I know it's developing. I asked him if he recalls making a mistake.
Sure. And I think I did ask you, but just to rephrase it, make sure we're clear. You recall making a statement to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir.
You regularly saw and know that Travis regularly carried a firearm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And multiple firearms, accurate?
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you, I'm not trying to get too personal here, but I need to ask you about some messages, both on social media and text messages. In addition to your communications that you've had with Travis McMichael over the years, you've also communicated not just face-to-face and by phone, but by Facebook and through text messages too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Specifically, I want to ask you about some racial messages that you and he shared. Do you recall those messages?
I do not.
Okay.
And Judge, I'm going to renew my objection at this moment. I don't understand how this line of questioning is going to aid the court in predicting future behavior of Travis McMichael. And I understand the court has already determined maybe a weight analysis here, but under 403, what's so probative about this? What's the prejudice of this when helping the court decide how does this predict future behavior? That's the nature of my question.
First, on direct, race was brought up by the defense. I have information that I need to ask this witness about related to what was asserted affirmatively on direct. Second, based on some of the things we talked about before this witness took the stand this morning involving our motions, if there is things of a racial nature that were communicated between the two of them, I think it goes to some of the prongs that you'll be assessing during argument, including whether or not there's a concurrent investigation as to racial aspects surrounding this case. I'll direct your attention, since you said you did not recall, to Facebook and a post on October the 17th of 2019. Do you recall Travis commenting on a photo that you posted and he said, quote, "ha ha ha ha," exclamation point, "sayonara, you're slant-eyed, F-U-C-K-S." Do you remember that?
No, sir.
Do you by chance know what that post was that you put up, to which Travis McMichael replied with slant-eyed, F-U-C-K-S?
No, sir, I don't remember.
Let me ask you about some text messages between you and Travis McMichael, specifically November the 28th of 2019. Do you remember Travis McMichael texting you about shooting a crackhead coon with gold teeth and a high point .45? You remember that text exchange?
No, sir, I don't. Not.
You actually responded to it saying something about Newports and a 40. You remember that?
No, sir, I do not remember that.
I think it'd be appropriate to show an exhibit to the witness and see if you recognize it instead of testifying about it before it's admitted.
Well, I believe I'm laying the foundation for doing just that, so I've asked the questions. I'd be happy to show them the text.
Yeah, I think that's what, if your honor agrees.
Sounds like we're all heading in the same direction. This is being does not call it out.
I'm going to approach. Look over here. This is called an extraction report. It isn't. I didn't plan on tendering it, but if you'd like me to, I can.
Are you just refreshing recollection?
Yes. This is November 28th, 2019. You see that? And then this is the exchange between Travis and yourself. Do you want to read over that for a minute? Just
To himself.
I'm sorry?
You said you want to do it. Make sure you're reading it to himself.
To yourself. Yes.
Yeah.
See if that refreshes your recollection. Of course.
Yeah,
You do recall that? Okay. So, to get back to the question I was asking now that I've shown you the text messages themselves, do you recall that text exchange between you and defendant Travis McMichael in which he was talking about shooting a black coon with gold teeth that had a high point .45?
He was referring to a raccoon.
Okay.
No,
A raccoon with gold teeth and a high point .45?
it was being facetious. I mean,
To which you responded that this raccoon needed Newport cigarettes. Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
That is an exchange between you and defendant Travis McMichael, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for the witness? Mr. Evans? Mr. Evans?
No.
Mr. Evans, he just asked you about some friends that you had testified that Travis was close with who are also black.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right? And do you recall whether or not Travis also worked with other members of the community who were black?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did he do that in the drilling company?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you were talking earlier about working with people across different backgrounds and different races, is that what you were speaking about?
Yes.
In part?
In part.
Okay. So you've just been shown what's a text communication between you and Travis about some joke that was texted back and forth between the two of you. Do you guys make inappropriate jokes sometimes?
Yes, sir.
All right. How does that kind of sense of humor permeate within the community here and with you and your friends?
I'm not sure how that's relevant to your inquiry about bond.
Well, you brought it up. Judge, I'm sorry, the state brought it up and wants to know the kind of communications that he's had with Mr. McMichael. So now I'm asking the kind of communications he's had.
I don't understand the question.
Okay.
So that's, are you asking whether that, he explained what he said the exchange was about. And the question is about the community.
The question is about the way that this witness and others may interact through text messages, sending each other jokes or inappropriate comments and making inappropriate comments to each other, and to ask him about that. And I believe the state has offered this to refresh his memory about something to deal with a coon for the purpose of saying that this is some type of racist communication between Mr. McMichael. I'm assuming that's where they're going with their argument with this. So I'm going to ask him about whether or not these type of jokes exist and who they exist between, and whether this is...
It's not consistent with his testimony.
No?
It's not, his testimony was definitely not jokes about it.
I understand that's what his testimony was. But the way that he was asked the question illuminated what could be an argument. I guess if Your Honor doesn't want me to recharacterize the testimony, which I'm not going to do, but making jokes, I guess what we could do, Judge, is see where the state goes with it. I understand what the court's concern is. Am I going outside of what the testimony is? No, I get that. I just understand what the state is proposing to bring up later. So why don't we, I'm happy to hold and see where it goes. Let's do that. Okay. I think the other one you said you didn't remember or know about. Okay, I don't have anything further.
Thanks, sir. You missed it. Yeah, you just go ahead and step out. So not,
don't discuss.
Yeah.
Not release, don't discuss your testimony.
We didn't get the other one. I don't got the screenshot on me.
Final witness, Judge. Ashley Langford.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give to the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Ms. Langford, you can take off your mask once you're seated. If you would, please speak into the microphone.
Okay.
I'm going to stand a little bit at an angle to you, but would you state your full name and spell your first name, because we have another Ashley.
Ashley Langford, Ashley.
And Miss Langford, where do you live?
Brunswick,
How long have you lived in Brunswick?
my whole life.
Are you married?
Yes, sir.
And are you married to Zach Langford?
Yes, sir.
How long are you married?
10 years.
10 years. And how many children do you have?
2.
And does that include a little 3-year-old named Grayson?
Yes, sir.
What kind of work do you do without naming the company you work for?
It's a financial planning firm. I'm director of operations.
And what is a director of operations?
Kind of everything that you would do inside the office. I just keep everything running, and I primarily handle a lot of our investment work as well.
So you do some work with clients?
Oh, yes, sir.
Involving their finances?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you worked for this investment firm?
14 years.
Did you have a job prior to that?
Yes, sir. I worked at a cardiologist's office when I was in high school, and then the only other job before that was a restaurant.
Do you know Travis McMichael?
Yes, sir.
How do you know Travis?
I met him through my husband, Zach, whenever we first started dating 15 years ago.
And would you tell the court what kinds of things you do with Travis?
He would come over to our house for dinner. We would go out on the boat. We would go to the hunting club. Just primarily with, we did stuff with our kids because.
Your 3.5-year-old Grayson, he's about the same age as Everett?
Yes, sir.
Are they friends?
Yes, sir.
And do they play with each other?
Mm-hmm.
The outings that you described, that's you and your child and Travis and his child?
Yeah, most of the time Zach would be with us, but sometimes he would bring Everett over and to play.
How would you describe Travis's personality?
He's kind of just a comical guy. He's there to make everybody laugh and happy, and
Does he have a temper?
I've never seen it.
In your 15 years of knowing Travis, you ever seen him just fly off the handle?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen him being confrontational with others?
No, sir.
Starting arguments or fights?
No, sir. He was typically there to make everybody laugh.
We're here for a bond hearing. The judge is going to consider these aspects of Travis's personality. Do you have an opinion as to whether Travis would flee the jurisdiction of the court, would run, if granted a bond?
No, sir. That's not his personality at all.
Why?
That's not the type of person he is. He's not going to run from his problem. He would see it through fully. And he's got his son here that he's not going to leave as well.
Were you aware of the crime in his neighborhood?
Yes, sir.
During the 2018-2019 time period?
Mm-hmm.
How were you aware of that?
And there's a Facebook scanner page where, people will listen to the scanner and post what's being said, and, I'd seen it there because, I've had my car broken into before, so I just kept up with where there was theft in the area. And so I thought I may have screenshot, a post or so, sent it to Travis to make sure that he knew that, things were going on in his area.
So you two were talking about the crime with you actually informing him when you could?
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever express to you frustration about the uptick in crime in his neighborhood?
A little bit. Just, that I guess there was crime happening, and, he had a confrontation prior to the February date that he was on the phone with Zach at that point, so I knew about that.
He was actually talking to Zach Langford when he saw the man on February 11th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did he call the police at that time?
Yes, sir. He hung up and said, let me hang up. And he hung up then.
After the February 23rd incident, did Travis express any remorse?
Yes, sir. He told me that he wished it never happened like that he would never want that to happen, and he prayed for Ahmaud's mother and family daily.
Did you ever question his sincerity in that?
No, sir.
What is your opinion with regard to Travis's honesty and truthfulness?
He's always been honest to me, especially on something of this magnitude. I didn't feel like that he was being just truthful to me.
During the time period between February 23rd and May 7th, before his time of his arrest, did he ever confide in you or express to you any feelings or desires he had to run before he was arrested?
No, sir.
Or to confront any people before he was arrested?
No, sir.
Or engage in any felonious conduct?
No, sir.
Have you ever known Travis to engage in any felonious conduct?
No, sir.
Do you know from your friendship with Travis anything about any involvement with any hate groups?
No, sir.
Is that even consistent with his personality?
No, sir. Not at all.
Ms. Langford, I don't know if you did this with your permission or not, but your husband was here a minute ago with the willingness to put up property to ensure that Travis would show up to court. He discussed that with you?
Yes, sir.
And are you okay with putting up property?
Yes, sir.
To ensure he would appear in court
Mm-hmm.
and abide by all the conditions if this judge were to set bond?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This gentleman might ask a question. Mr. Evans.
Briefly. Hi, Ms. Langford. My name is Jesse Evans. I represent the state of Georgia. So looking back at some of the notes that I have here, you said that you've known defendant Travis McMichael for 15 years, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that predates his stint in the Coast Guard, correct?
Yes, sir.
There were about 4 years that he was away while he was in the Coast Guard. Is that accurate?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Not sure on the precise time, so I won't hold you to
Yeah.
it. Okay. And you're a supporter of Travis McMichael and that you're here to testify on his behalf, and is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And no matter what the decision this court makes, you'll continue to be a supporter of his as a 15-year friend, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Fair to say that you don't know all the facts of this case. You know what you've maybe seen on the media or what Travis McMichael, the defendant in this case, has told you, correct?
That's correct, until the hearing.
And I want to talk to you about the remorse that Travis McMichael has expressed to you. The chronology of him saying that he feels bad about what happened to Ahmaud, that was after the shooting, correct?
Yes, sir.
And predating his arrest and charge for murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in between that time, at some point, he expressed to you that he was sorry for what he done.
Yes, sir.
There was an interview that was conducted with you by the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. They also interviewed your husband, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to ask you about a prior gun theft. Do you remember Travis McMichael talking to you about a gun that was stolen from a vehicle at his home?
I remember hearing about it, yes.
Okay, you heard about it. That didn't come directly from him?
He may have been at our house and told us about it at the same time, but I think he called my husband and told him, and I was with him.
You remember Travis directly telling you that he didn't know who had taken that firearm and it could have been kids?
I think we talked about that, yes, sir.
You did talk directly to him about
after
that?
the fact.
Got it.
On the same day.
Travis McMichael, he gave you his version of what happened on February 23rd. That's the date of the shooting, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But you weren't present there and didn't see it or anything like that?
Correct.
When he did give his version of it, one of the quotes that I had from your interview, Travis McMichael told you that he tried to, quote, corner up Mr. Arbery. Do you remember that?
I apologize, that was months ago. I'm not really sure if I said corner, but, basically they just wanted to stop him to talk to him to allow police to get there.
The final question, or one of the final questions that you were asked about involved hate groups and things like that. You'd agree with me that you only know what is in a person's heart and mind based on what you see or what they tell you, correct?
Correct.
In other words, a person could harbor views that if you haven't seen it or haven't been shared with you, you might not know about, correct?
Correct. Anybody can.
Anybody, even a close friend.
Right.
Thank you, ma'am. Just 1 second, ma'am. Is there a mortgage on the property by chance?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you know how much equity you have in the property?
And one of the properties I have 41,000.
Okay. And then you said one of the properties, there's more than one?
Yes, sir.
What's the other one? You know, equity, and is there a mortgage on it?
I haven't found that out yet.
Okay.
I did reach out to him. I'm waiting to hear back.
Both of them have mortgages, though?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Eddie Reader.
Very quickly, Mr. Evans asked you about knowing what was in Travis's heart.
From observations of knowing him for 15 years, have you ever seen any actions consistent with him being a member of a hate group or acting in a hateful way towards a group?
No, sir. Never.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think I've confirmed this, but you also didn't see him when he gunned down Ahmaud Arbery in the middle of the street on February 23rd of 2020.
I did not see the altercation happen. No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You missed it. Understand that is the final witness.
Final live witness, we have a few documents, but if you want us to wait till after lunch, we do.
Let's break for lunch. I also want to make sure, given the rest of that's going on, journalists, because I understand there's overlapping witnesses in some way with Greg McMichael.
The only witness that overlaps, Your Honor, is Nina Michael. We'll recall her so that she can talk about issues having to do with Fred. And then from that point on, the rest of our witnesses are separate.
So I hadn't released everybody. I'm just trying to figure out what to do from lunch.
If they can just be released for lunch, then we'll have make sure our witnesses return after lunch.
And that's fine. We'll do that. If I can just make sure also that all of them are instructed that since they're not released, there will be no discussion about the testimony. Why don't we, I'm going to try to compress this a little bit, probably not that much, but let's plan on 1:20, so 2:15, 1:25, 2:15. Let's get back on record on 2:15. We'll address the remainder of the documentary evidence and take out state case. Anything further from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
From Travis?
No.
From Greg?
There you go.
There you are.